Hello, guys, and welcome. I am Bjorn.
And I'm Tasty Graph, and this is Game Design Book Club.
Yay! Sup, Tedious
Woohoo!
Oatmail, sup, Corner Lords, ThinkBot Labs, welcome everybody. I hope you could hear Tasty this time. Did we
I hope
ace
so
it this
too.
time? Did we? Maybe.
I think we aced it.
Yeah, we aced it. We're
We succeeded in using the interface,
yeah,
which
exactly,
is one of the things we're going to be talking about today.
exactly. The interface of our own mouths, which is
Yep.
surprisingly hard. Yes,
So
we're
the
professionals now. We can retire. Okay, thank you guys. We'll see you next week.
we have to forgive Sound of Gaming.
Yeah, I was really sad. Actually the intro lacked impact because he wasn't here. It was like he needed to be here cheering. That way we would always succeed with our intros.
I just pretended like he was here cheating. Honestly,
Yeah,
I
that's
have a
what.
GIF. I have a GIF of him cheering.
So we're here on a Saturday because I won't be able to do it stream tomorrow. But for everybody's knowledge, tomorrow we're gonna do a marathon. So at the same time, in 24 hours, I will restream all the episodes. So if you're new and you want to rewatch everything, you can follow along. It's gonna be like I don't know how many hours. Like we have 7 or 8 episodes, seven episodes, and they're like 2 to 4 hours. So
It's the best kind of marathon where I don't actually have to move.
yeah, we can all like just I'll just be in chat staring at it. No, I
Yeah.
won't be able to be in the chat for that marathon, but you guys can be here and laugh at me without me knowing. So
Can we even do like a marathon in 24 hours? I mean, the first one was like, this is easy book club, and we do like 2 hours or something. And then from there on, it just went up and up and up until the massive 4 hour one that we did
yeah,
like 3 weeks ago.
I think
Excuse me.
I don't think it's 24 hours yet, luckily, but it might be
No.
24 hours once we're ready with this book. So right now we're a bit beyond, like bit further than halfway. So we are at chapter 15 and 16 in the second edition, and
And 13 and 14 in the first edition.
yeah, I missed that last stream. It was like in the first edition, I have no clue what's happening. So we're covering both editions.
Yeah.
Mine has 32 editions, so that means that we're about halfway in chapters too. So let's get started. So the first chapter's name is Players Play Games Through an Interface.
Yep.
And it's kind of interesting. Again, because what he means with interface, like a lot of time when you talk with devs, if you talk about an interface, they instantly think UI, like the thing that's on the screen. But with interface, you can mean many things. It's how you interface, just like how you can interface with an API. Here you also interface, for example, with the controller, and we'll go a bit deeper into that as we go through the
Yeah.
chapter. So you can interface with the
So when
controller, the keyboard, the mouse. That's also a interface which you interact with the game. And then you have the interface that shows you what's happening in the game.
Yeah, it's basically talking about how it's referring to the interaction between two things. So there's an interface between the mouse and the computer, or the mouse and the game, or the player and the mouse for that matter.
Yeah, exactly. So
And that's what they're talking about in the next lens 53 in my book, the lens of control.
yeah, so let's go straight into that. It's 59 for me. So we have a 6 lens difference already. So it says this lens uses beyond just examining your interface. Oh, sorry. This lens uses beyond just examining your interface. What? I can't read anymore. This lens has uses beyond just examining your interface. Since meaningful control is essential for immersive interactivity, to use this lens, ask yourself these questions. When players use the interface, does it do what it is expected? If not, why not? Intuitive interface give a feeling of control. Is your interface easy to unmaster or hard to master? Do your players feel they have a strong influence over the outcome of the game? If not, how can you change that? Feeling powerful equals feeling in control. Do your players feel powerful? Can you make them feel more powerful somehow? So, I don't know if the lens text itself, so it's the lens of control.
Yeah.
Very badly read by me. I'm still warming up, guys. Give me a couple of secs.
I'll take the next one.
Yeah, so I don't butcher it. Um,
No, just because I want to read too.
that's why we're here. We just want to read a book out loud.
Yeah, I'm just here to read. It's like I want to read stuff.
So I really like. I almost say there's this one paragraph that's at least in my edition that says, "Before we proceed, though, we should consider the goal of a good interface. It isn't to look nice or to be fluid, although those are nice qualities. The goal of an interface is to make players feel in control of their experience. This idea is important enough that we should keep a lens around for frequent examination of whether a player feels in control." I think that's actually a better description for the lens of control. So the idea is that not making a pretty interface, but it's actually how you control the game and how you know what is happening in the game. So it's kind of two-way, and we'll come back to that in just the next couple of lenses. Let's
Hello,
see.
Number Cruncher and Java and everyone else.
Yeah, Sub Number Cruncher, Nafe. Who else have we missed? Sorry if we don't miss your hi. It doesn't mean we don't love you. It just means we missed your message because we are really trying to go through the book, so it doesn't take 4 hours.
Yeah, but as you were saying, like the primary goal of having like the way you know that you have a good interface is when it makes the player feel like they're in control.
Yeah, and I think
Is
also
essentially what you're saying.
exactly, and I think that a lot of the time it's also about a byproduct of feeling in control is also feeling more immersed. So when you feel like you kind of forget yourself, and you just experience the game. I think later on he discusses it a bit in a chapter.
Yeah, we'll get into that later. That's the projection when the player feels immersed into it. It's called projection.
Exactly. But I think that's one way to detect are players in control, for example.
Yeah.
The Spider-Man cup? Do you have a Spider-Man cup, dude? I have a flower cup.
Yeah, if you look at the back next to the Super Mario Pez dispenser,
let me
there's
get
a Spider-Man cup.
No. It would be funny if a hand actually would come over at your screen.
Yeah, and kind of creepy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would be awesome.
We need to put that special effect in.
And next to the Spider-Man cup, there's a Venom cup. Yeah. And behind the Night Elf, there's a Pepe bird, like the little orange bird.
We need to do a stream someday where we just go through your shelves. Like all the books, all the stuff, because you have so much interesting stuff in the background. We should go.
It's just so funny things, like geeky things.
Like once we finish this book or something, or even before that, we just do a tasty special where we just talk about tasty stuff.
I'm up for that. There's always a story with all the things that I have.
Yeah, that's the awesome
I
thing.
collect it because, I like something about it, or there's something that reminds me of something. So yeah. You said the thing in the lens of control where it says when the player uses the interface, does it do what is expected? If not, why not?
Yeah.
I think that's really important. Like, if you press a button, does it do what you really wanted it to do? Like, if you press up on the movement thing, does it move your player up, or does it open a menu? It sounds really rudimentary. Yeah, but I mean, it sounds really rudimentary, but it is really important. Like, when I'm teaching my students programming, they're using Scratch, and in Scratch you have like events, and you set up an event that says, if the user presses the right arrow key, then you can add more blocks and have stuff happen at that event. But for most users, it's like, but I pressed the right arrow key. Something should happen. Why does it not move to the right? Well, because you never told it to move to the right. But I told it when I pressed right. Yes, you did. Now you need to put more blocks in.
Yeah.
And it's kind of this, when you're making an interface, your player might expect something and you might want something other to happen. So it's just one of these cases where, let's just say that you made a game where you press the up arrow and a menu opens, and then you have the B button that makes you jump. That just doesn't always make sense for the player.
Yeah. There's of course a lot of depending on what job I discussed it here too with FIFA and platforming. It depends definitely on the intricacy of the game also, and some games require the player to be accustomed to certain, how to say, there's standards that have been evolved over the years that you know that you wouldn't, some most games have a specific button to jump. You could also make it so you press up on a controller to jump, but I think that would be weird, at least for me, in most cases. There's games that do that too, and that's fine, but that's more there's certain things you expect it to work, and then sometimes you break the expectations, right? And that's fine too. Then you might find something novel, and we can discuss also that a bit later with the next upcoming lenses. But I think the lens of control doesn't have a lot to discuss, and we should just jump straight. It's just the thing you should have. The player should always feel in control. There is no magic behind it. If they don't feel like control, then you need to ask yourself why and fix it.
Yeah.
And how to fix it, and that's where we come now to the meat of this chapter. Do you want to read the next one? Lens 60 in mind,
sure.
and lens 50?
54 in mind, the lens of physical interface.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by physical interface, we're talking about it could be a controller, a mouse, a keyboard, something like that.
I'll hold up a controller, so.
Yeah. Lens number 54 or 60, the lens of physical interface. Somehow the player has a physical interaction with your game. Copying existing physical interfaces is an easy trap to fall into. Use this lens to be sure that your physical interface is well suited to your game by asking these questions. What does the player pick up and touch? Can this be made more pleasing? How does this map to the actions in the game world? And can the mapping be more direct? If you can't create a custom physical interface, what metaphor are you using when you map the inputs to the game world? How does the physical interface look under the lens of toy? That's a lens that we covered in a very, very early chapter. How does the player see, hear, and touch the world of the game? Is there a way to include a physical output device that will make the world become more real in the player's imagination? The world of video games occasionally goes through dry spells where designers feel it's not feasible to create custom physical interfaces. But the marketplace thrives on experimentation and novelty, and suddenly specially crafted physical interfaces like the Dance Dance Revolution mat, the Guitar Hero guitar, and the Wiimote appear, bringing new life to old gameplay by giving players a new way to interact with old mechanics. Yep.
Yeah. So he has these diagrams in the pages before that kind of basically divides it into physical input and physical output. So physical input would be, like we said, the controller, and the lens, very deeply already discussed. There's usually you just have the controller, keyboard, mouse, or maybe something else. But then there is cases where they've created custom ones, like in the dancing mats and Guitar Heroes. Of course, as an indie dev, if you're indie dev, that's probably not feasible. But you could still think about it. It might be the thing that makes it interesting in your game. But even if you're not making your own, you can still think about how can you make it so that this physical interface is almost invisible for the player. So how can you make it so that you just act with the controller, and then in the dream world it would just translate into actions in the game world.
Yeah, and then from the game world it translates through your monitor or binoculars or whatever it is you use to view your game, and that would be the physical output.
Yeah,
So you
exactly.
kind of imagine that you have like on one side you have the player, and on the opposite side you have the game world, and then between these two things, between the player and the world, you have the physical input and you have the physical output. And physical input could be like, it could be you clapping your hands or whatever, and then there's a device that can record that and put it into the game. And output wise, that could be a monitor or could be VR goggles or something like that.
Sup, Drew Van Camp, welcome. And Janosh, welcome. It's okay to lurk. I think this is the best stream to lurk in. But also,
Yeah.
if you have questions, we try to read them and try to take them into account. Then maybe
Sorry,
kind of...
cat.
That's okay. So let's maybe go... let's not read the next lens yet, but let's discuss it before, maybe. Because then, okay, you have the physical input, physical output, and in between there, here's something he calls virtual interface. So virtual interface is probably what most people would call UI or something like that.
Yep.
And that's where you would then like show, the thing is, it doesn't need to be only UI. So for example, clicking, with the mouse, so the mouse is the physical input then, clicking on a button is a virtual input. So the button, you could also have a button in the real physical space. Actually, a touchscreen phone, it's the physical input is just a big touch panel, but all the buttons are virtual, for example. So actually all the buttons are, so it's a really good example of that too. I don't remember, he did discuss it shortly here, but not so in depth, the touchscreen stuff. But, and then you of course have stuff that it's, again, input, that's input, and then you have the output the same way in the virtual interface, which is showing, for example, how many lives you have left, or, an energy bar, or, any, depending on the game, anything. Should I, or do you want to take the next lens? We should probably just read it out loud.
I can do the next one if you want.
Yep, sure. I'll take transparency then.
Alrighty. Lens number 55, the lens of virtual interface. Designing virtual interfaces can be very tricky. Done poorly, they become a wall between the player and the game world. Done well, they amplify the power and control a player has in the game world. Ask these questions to make sure that your virtual interface is enhancing player experience as much as possible. What information does a player need to receive that isn't obvious just by looking at the game world? When does the player need this information? All the time? Only occasionally? Only at the end of a level? How can information be delivered to the player in a way that won't interfere with the player's interactions with the game world? Are there elements in the game world that are easy to interact with using a virtual interface, like a pop-up menu, for instance? And are they easier to interact with directly? What kind of virtual interface is best suited to my physical interface? Pop-up menus, for example, are a poor match for a gamepad controller.
Yeah. He talks a lot about pop-up menus. Sometimes felt.
Yeah, he seems
like
very happy about pop-up menus.
Yeah, I don't like that much pop-ups, but there is of course a place for them too. Like for example, the reward screen and stuff like that. So that could be actually a virtual interface. It tells you how you did after the game. A very, very important thing, which a lot of the time is left for the last thing for people to implement, which should be, especially in smaller game jam games, should be done quite early because that's the reward for the whole game. But again, the thing with these lenses is kind of more theoretical, and we discussed this actually off stream a bit with Tasty already. That this whole chapter these are things that maybe if you get stuck with an interface, it maybe helps you break it apart, just like the elemental tetrad. So knowing the building blocks of a game, like what is a game, game mechanic, and what is aesthetics. So this is the same thing. This kind of defines just the building blocks of an interface. It's not that easy to apply. Like, you can apply it, like I said. In my opinion, you can apply it. Oh, that was loud. I got infected. welcome to the company Game Devs, and cheers for the follow. So these interfaces, like I was saying, they maybe are more useful when you're actually designing an interface. You can of course look at through these like terminology at other games while you're playing it, but I don't know how much you would learn. I don't know how you feel, Tasty.
I think for me, the most of the lenses in this chapter, there's something that you would probably kind of look at after you've designed your interface. You'd look at it and you'd be like, can I do some changes? But it's not going to feel really meaty like a lot of the other lenses.
Yeah.
I mean, I use the lens of virtual interface, the thing where it says, when does the player need this information? I used it. It kind of reminded me that maybe the player does not need to know what level they're on in my game all the time. So I change it so that, you start the level, it shows at the top, and then it disappears after a few seconds. It's stuff like that, because early on in development, you kind of have a tendency to show a lot of information, and then slowly you kind of take it away. So, this chapter is more a case of polishing up your interface, which I guess most of the lenses really are, polishing up and kind of looking at, are there any problems? If so, then remove stuff.
Yeah, and that almost goes into a lens that we're going to cover soon, which is the lens of primality, which is the whole ordering and structuring, showing things when you need to show them. And we'll go deeper into that. And it's very, very interesting. And that's probably the most useful thing, is when you start categorizing. But then thinking, well, it is good to think about, is it going to be a virtual or physical interface? Like, am I going to give it a button on this thing? Like, we only have limited set of buttons on a controller. I don't even know how many there are. There's 4 buttons here. You have 4 the D-pad. That's 4. Then you have, of course, the directional 2 thumbsticks. And then you have 2 triggers and 2 like bumper buttons. So that's not a lot of buttons. And then of course, without us going too deeply, of course you can have modes. So the meanings of these buttons can change per mode, and we'll discuss that a little bit later.
And the combination as well, like holding down a trigger while pressing another button.
Exactly.
But then you have to teach your player, and that kind of makes it not so simple anymore.
Yeah, and you don't want. First off, Lana Lux, welcome to the company Game Devs, and cheers for the follow. But you don't want that feeling. Everybody has had this feeling, who's played a bit, like a lot of games, is that, that feeling when your brain needs to go, you have to kind of use a higher order or like a different part of your brain to figure out, like, tell your body that, no, I'm not playing tennis anymore, I'm playing soccer. It's kind of like this feeling. I played just, on Thursday, I was at a fair, and hosting a live game dev showdown, and there was a lot of games to demo there, and there was this game where you would play 2 characters at the same time, and when the one character would, when you moved up, so when you pressed up on the touchscreen, the one character would move up and the other one would go down. And then if you press left, the one character would go left, another one would go right. And that means that when I look at the left character, let's call it that, it was a fox, and the right character was a wolf. So when I looked at the a fox, it would always map directly. So left is left, right is right, up is up, and down is down. But looking at the wolf, it would be the reverse. So my brain always had to go like, to understand how do I move the wolf now. So every time I looked at the other character, my brain had to shift modes. And that is very, very tricky. The game was a puzzle game, so it was kind of okay, but for that. But
yeah.
But you probably have had that feeling. If you haven't, you should play some more, play some game jam games.
More puzzle games.
Puzzle games, especially. But you have that also in other games where you just notice, a lot of time games where you're driving a car, you're flying a plane, you're shooting people on the ground, like Battlefield. In the first versions, you had a bit of those feelings where you're like, oh yeah, now I need to remember that when I ended up playing, now it's going to be invert controls for flying. So suddenly up is not up anymore, it's down.
Or something as simple as, playing old school racer games where there were power ups and power downs, and then you get the power down that makes you randomize your controls or something, and all of a sudden you press forward to go backwards and you press right to go left or something. I don't know if you remember any of the old games that had those things,
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
confusion power down.
Confusion power down.
Yeah, what do
Yeah.
we call those? I mean, we call them buffs, debuffs, but we call them
Debuffs,
power
maybe.
ups. I always call them power ups and power downs.
Yeah, I guess. Well, again, punishing the player is fine as long as the thing I always think about when I do buffs. This is a bit different topic, but always when thinking about buffs, I think it doesn't have a feedback loop in it. I'm a bit
Yeah.
careful with those feedback loops. Feedback loop meaning that it's kind of a compound effect or like it's like the Lemony Snicket, a series of unfortunate events. You don't want it to become a series of unfortunate ones. You want it to be like, okay, you know, bad boy, you did a bit wrong. Now here's a bit of punishment, but you don't want it like, oh, now because I got punished, now I get more punished because of the
Yeah.
punishment, and then you're suddenly just whirling through space out of control or something.
Mm.
But yeah,
And it does happen quite a lot.
yeah,
I mean, in a lot of games, you do see that, if a player gets a bad, like a negative thing early on in the game, they'll just restart it. It's like, okay, I can't go on now because my goal is to do something where I need to not have this negative at the beginning because it'll just be bad. I had this issue in one of the games that I made where um you would shoot stuff and that would give you a combo, and then if you missed a shot it would half your combo, and
yeah.
that was just like, it was ridiculous. Like later on in the game, if you had 7,000 combo or something, then shooting a mob and all of a sudden you had to shoot through 3,500 just to get back to 7,000. People just gave up instead. They just pressed the quit button, and I was like, okay, I need to figure out something else. This halving your thing doesn't work. Originally it was like setting it back to 0,
Yeah.
but that was too punishing as well.
One thing to, before we go forward and read the lens of transparency, which is the next one, just to clarify, negative feedbacks and positive feedback loops are really good and they should be used in games too, but you need to be careful and use them knowingly. Actually, in the previous chapters when we discussed the difficulty curve or how to the challenge rating, it's kind of, it gets more challenging as you go on in the game. This is mirrored cam, so it would go up like this and it goes kind of in waves, right? So a lot of the time when you have a positive feedback loop, you might want to make a negative feedback loop to kind of counterbalance that. So for example, I get more weapons, makes me more powerful, easier to kill monsters, which makes me easier. It's easier for me to give even more weapons or gold or something. But then also you have another feedback loop there, which is like monsters get harder. So that counterbalances that feedback loop, did not go out of like shoot through the window or something like crazy. So it just becomes too easy. You're like, it's so easy. I just got this one
It's so
sword and
easy.
now
It's like Cuphead.
all right, let's read the next one. I think there's not much to discuss here. There is a lot of information and it is useful, but it is also very kind of academic, which is really good. If you're interested, I really recommend buying this book. Even if you watch these, there's still information we can't cover. And also, of course, reading it, you might have other insights than just what we had. So the lens 62. Hopefully. So lens 62,
Yeah,
and is it 55 then for you?
it's 56.
56, sorry. The lens
Yep.
of transparency. No matter how beautiful your interface is, it would be better if there were less of it. The ideal interface becomes invisible to the player, letting the player's imagination be completely immersed in the game world. To ensure invisibility, ask yourself these questions. What are the player's desires? Does the interface let the players do what they want? Is the interface simple enough that with practice, players will be able to use it without thinking? Do new players find the interface intuitive? If not, Can it be made more intuitive somehow? Would allowing players to customize the controls help or hurt? Does the interface work well in all situations, or are there cases near a corner going very fast, etc., when it behaves in ways that will confuse the player? Can players continue to use the interface well in stressful situations, or do they start fumbling with controls or missing crucial information? If so, how can this be improved? Does anything confuse players about the interface? On which of the 6 interface arrows is it happening? Do players feel a sense of immersion when using the interface? So this lens is basically what I discussed shortly. Like the best interfaces are the invisible ones. That said, with that you feel in control and know exactly what's happening. So, for example, Arash, which I worked a lot with, he has this kind of wish to always make the whole interface fully transparent. You don't see any interface, everything is embedded in the world. The problems a lot of the times with that, for example, it's a cool ideal and something I always strive for too, to embed it encode it into the world, game world, instead of just numbers on the screen. The problem with that, it's not always then clear how it works, and then you suddenly have to teach the player a lot. To teach them, like, oh, now because the armor pieces have fallen off on the character means you're low on health, or something like that.
Yeah, I think they did a good job on something like Super Mario. Like you start out small, you can take one hit, and you eat a power up, you become larger. Or in Ghosts and Goblins, old arcade game as well, where you had a knight. He starts out with an armor, then he gets hit, then he's wearing underwear, and then he dies. Or more modern games, you have stuff like Dead Space, where he has I think it's on the back of his armor, there's like dots or glowing lights, and they indicate his health level.
Yep. So there is, of course, ways to do it. I'm just using it as an example. Those are excellent examples of doing it well. And that's the important thing. Do it. If you're going to do it, you have to make sure it's done well so that it's always clear, even for a person who is a novice, especially when it's something as crucial as health. And then the other thing is like what it said here was like, make sure people don't miss stuff. Very common, even in my game, I have this problem because I haven't really made that into my game yet. Like, and that's that, when you, for example, solve a puzzle or a part of a puzzle requires an item, like let's say there's an energy bar that fills up when you collect things. And then what happens is that there's no visual indication that there is like that like if I walk on a crystal and I get more power, it has no like visual of indicating that, oh, look, here in the user interface, the power bar is increasing. Like a lot of the time you want to make this kind of like glimmer, like lead your eye to the interface so you know those two are connected. In my game, for example, a big part is that it's missing sound, which is part of the interface too. So when you get hurt, you kind of don't notice it. It's so slight, the thing, and the interface, you don't look at the hearts in interface because there's nothing leading your eye there. It just vanishes, a heart just vanishes. And then, a lot of the time you just end up with the feeling like, oh, I just died. I don't know. Maybe, I guess I just took 3 hits. I don't know when, but... And that's very important to remember when designing your interface, is that you should also, especially with the virtual interface, you need to connect the virtual interface to the physical, the game world. So you know what in the game world is changing the virtual interface. And that's not something you could skip. I don't even know did he discuss that in this? I don't remember.
I don't remember.
Well, it's in the lens.
But I do remember something from Tuesday where you were playing my game, and
I misunderstood everything and I butchered the game.
No. It was like there was a fuel thing, and you picked it up, and you were like, I wonder what this did. You did get it, like, you picked up one, and you were like, oh, this is fuel. But that was a clear example of it would have been a lot better if I had made some fuel stuff move from where you picked it up down to the counter so that you could see, like, it looks like it's blip, 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 going up.
Yeah.
I even added it into my Trello so that I can do that in the future. So I can make it go blip, 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 blip.
Yeah, and the thing is, most people will figure it out. but you don't want to
Yeah.
have, like, I figured it out in your game too. The thing is, if you can do it so I don't have to think about it, it's just easier, and I'm less likely to quit your game because you
Yeah.
don't want to leave it to chance. Do I understand something? Like, especially when you have intricate, like, I've seen a lot of games with a lot of numbers and a lot of different gauges and things. In some games I've been testing on Tuesday, and a lot of the time I haven't understood everything, and then I have to actually play the game just with the intention of figuring out what those numbers were, and that's
Yeah.
not fun. I don't play games to figure out interfaces. I play them to have an experience.
It's funny you mention it though, because I'm not like you in that sense. I'm the type who
You just
love
like playing around with interfaces.
exactly. I mean there's something when I play games where a great part of the experience for me is to figure out how stuff works. And then when I finally figure out how things work, I'm like, okay, I get this game. Now I'm going to play something else,
Yeah, I mean,
which
of
is
course,
really sad. But
I mean, again, it depends on what the game. If I'm playing, someone in chat said Hollow Knight. Um, you know, I wanna figure out how the game mechanics work. That's part of the fun. But figuring out the interface necessarily not. But then if I play something like maybe StarCraft or something more intricate, figuring out the interface and how to better manipulate it to be a better player definitely is part of the fun.
yeah,
But not maybe in the beginner levels either. So I understand exactly where you're coming from with that. A lot. You have to remember, dude. We're both game designers. We design games, which means that we look at games with other eyes. A lot of the
yeah,
time, like if you read a book like this or Level Up or The Theory of Fun, and you made a couple of games, you will notice that when you play a game, sometimes you just put on your analytical hat, and when you play a game just from that perspective, that's exactly what's going to happen. You're like, oh, I wonder what this does. Maybe I could like, and you just try to figure out how everything works so that you learn. And then once you've done that, it's like, okay, next game. And you could
yeah,
actually even look at Let's Play videos and have the similar experience where you're just like, oh, this guy's playing it. Oh, he goes there, that happens. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, I understand this game. Next.
mm,
It actually can ruin games. For a lot of game designers, it becomes where they can't play games because they just go into this analysis mode, which means that they never get immersed into the game.
yeah. I
Oh,
I
Momon says
do
that.
enjoy them, but yeah, I mean, I play a lot of games, but I tend to kind of stick with specific genres. I very rarely go outside my genres because I know that I don't enjoy the games past the analytical point. It's like I'll figure out how the things work and then I don't play them anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's a shooter game, I don't know, I'll shoot forever. I enjoy those kinds of games, and
Yeah.
also games with like numbers and leveling up. The upgrade aspect of that. I really love that. I've played the same mobile game for 3 years since it was launched, and played MMOs for loads of years, like Ultima. Stopped my subscription like 1.5 years ago, so I guess that's like 20 years or something. It's 19 years maybe.
Yeah. In the previous chapter, he discussed the whole hand to mind. Was it head? No, hand and head. So I think you like more head-based games, also like not necessarily puzzle games, but you like to be. You need to have some kind of like it can't. Well, it could. You said like you play shooter games,
Yeah.
and that's more hand, but it's more relaxing, right? That's when you want to play something, where you want to be kind of in quotes brain dead, and you just want to
Oh yes.
have the skill of doing something. But then I think what you do for most part, you probably play a lot of the mind games, head games, where you have to use your head to do well. And RPGs are definitely, like you said, like leveling up, figuring out what skills to take. Those are
Yeah.
kind of it's not a puzzle, but you still have to use your like try to figure out what is the best thing for a given situation. So it's a very
Yeah.
good mix of action and puzzle.
Yeah. You have to like make an analysis of the situation. How many enemies are there? What sort of weapons are they using? What are their weaknesses? What are their strengths? You have to remember a lot of things.
Yeah.
Especially if you're playing games where the enemies that you face are usually procedurally or randomly generated. Those types of games can, for me at least, pose a challenge because it's, I'm looking at stuff and I have to always adjust how I approach things. There are, of course, a lot of RPGs where you don't have to do that, especially on the mobile platforms where they can be pay to win, and it's like if you have the combination of these 4 units, then you don't have to adjust your strategy, but just play free to play and you get loads of strategy options.
Yeah. I like the picture they have here, by the way. After the lens, do you have the Penny Arcades example demo controls where they have
Demo controls? Yeah, it's like, are you kidding me? What's all this stuff?
So this is an example of non-transparent. You can't really read it, which is sad because it's the fun part is in text. I don't think I can get it on cam. You can find that probably online. It's Penny Arcade demo controls. Look it up. Maybe someone can link it in chat if they find it. But the whole idea.
Left trigger, assume stone form. Left button, damage Vectron 7. Right trigger, fire. Summon Galdabrast and choke the pixie on the right button, and examine blue chests on left button, and unclose hyper menu on down. And it's like, wow, there's so much crap here. I know it's just a parody. It's not a real game, but it's still funny.
Yeah, it's quite funny. I actually think like I have a lot of times, like I see this diagram. This is used in games still a lot. Like they don't
Press
make fun
X to do an ollie.
It says display partial menu if you hold.
Yeah.
No.
Yep.
So the whole like one experience I dislike. I don't dislike these diagrams, by the way. They're fine. But a lot of times people put it in especially multiplayer games, in the loading menu. And that's the only place when you first time play a multiplayer game with your friends, and if you ever play a local multiplayer, it's always that, two guys and never played it, one guy has played it a bit, and one guy's like an expert and beats everybody. And then what happens is that the game doesn't teach anything for the other people. Like there's no like tutorial in quotes. So they basically just throw this demo controls, and usually they have like 2 versions, and you're like, oh. And then you have to look like, I have 5 seconds to read all this. Oh, ollie on the X, and then hold to partial. Oh no! Well, how did I pass the ball? I don't. Oh, okay, I don't know now. And I just like.
And then they're like, "Oh my God, noobs just button mash," and I'm thinking, yeah, because they don't know what to do. It doesn't make sense. Your game doesn't make sense. It's just press 7 bajillion combinations to do something simple when you could just spam the button and win anyway half the time.
Well, it's in this case, usually when you then play it enough, you will learn those things, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And usually the multiplayer games are what I've played are quite simple. But I would think that just having it's like a tutorial, meaning like, let's say there's a countdown from 30 down before the match starts. You could just have a mini tutorial there, like on the, like if it's a football game, you could show like left, right with the thumbstick next to the player you control, and you could play around a bit before the match starts, and you would already teach more. And then the game would be more fun, because usually it goes like 3 matches until people even know how to play, and that's kind of sucks, especially if there's long rounds.
Yeah. And a lot of the co-op and multiplayer games for the Xbox with the Kinect thing on it, usually before the level started, it would show like a short animation repeatedly, over and over to show how to do things. And that worked because there were so limited amounts of things to do. Like you'd be able to flap your arms to go upwards, or push your arms forwards to do something else. So you'd usually only have maybe 3 actions or 4 actions, but it gets more complicated when you're playing something like Street Fighter or Tekken or whatever, those kinds of beat 'em up genres. That's like, there's so many combinations. You can't just learn that. You basically need to play on your own, and then you start playing against a human and you realize it's like, oh crap, this guy attacks a lot more than he defends, and then you lose and you go home and cry. True story.
Sorry, I'm reading chat at the same time.
It's okay. I can laugh at my own jokes.
No lies. We're not allowed to laugh here. This is a non-laughter stream.
Spectrum says, "What do you guys think of adaptive UI? Meaning you show you player level needs." Well, I think it's pretty important. I mean, do you think like if there's a game where you start out by barely showing any UI, and then as you progress further into the game and unlock more features and learn more stuff, it starts to show you more things? I kind of like it when they do that in games, but not if they hold it for like too long. You know, some shooter games can get really, really boring if it's like you start out and you can't do anything other than move. And then, you know, after 15 minutes, it's like, finally got a weapon, but, you know, I can't use alternative fire on it because I haven't learned that either. You know, that gets a bit too much for me.
Well, that's the whole thing, like, which discussed in the previous chapter, which is that you know, for the more skilled players, you shouldn't make it a time-based thing that they have to wait the same 30 minutes that a newbie would have played it. You should allow them to finish it in 5 minutes or 2 minutes. Like, make it so that if you're more experienced, they can just play it normally through and just finish it in like 5. Then they're not bored and they won't quit your game. And the adaptive thing, like, I think also that it's not used enough. Like, a lot of the time I play a game, actually, I like that idea, where, you know, you have a lot of stuff on the interface, and then you play the first time the game, and you're like, what's that? What's that? What's that? Mm-hmm. Am I supposed to click this or that? I'd rather do it. And then they still introduce the things in steps, but why couldn't they introduce also the UI, like you're suggesting, like have a bit thing like, oh, now you can wield a weapon, whatever.
It's a really good way to make the player curious and to make the player surprised. It's a really good way to do that by slowly adding in new elements. And if you can keep this up throughout the entire lifetime of the game, then if you can somehow convince the player that there is always something new to discover that gets put on your UI, then that's a really powerful tool to make them want to play more as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And then it's easier to teach when something pops up at the moment you're teaching it. You will know which thing was connected. I have played many games where it's like introducing 6. Oh, you have buffs, you have debuffs, you have buffity buffs, and you know it goes in like 2 seconds, and then I can't really remember which of these 3 was which buff or that buff, and you know. In the UI, you're just like, oh, and then you have to start playing and sucking at the game until you figure out, oh, okay, this is what they meant. I would rather they just, like you said, like, it would just appear, and then same time, you would also visually know, like, if it goes here, like here would appear, then I know that now they said that, and they appeared there, now I know it's connected. Just the same thing as when you gain rocket fuel, right? I wish there was a law where game developers would provide an option to entirely disable in-game text dialogue on second playthrough. I think most games do allow you to disable even on the first. It's just a setting in the menu.
Yeah, Number Cruncher says that he hates having to mash the A button to skip hundreds of boxes of dialogue when he's speedrunning. I mean, games that are good for speedrunning should ideally just have a speedrun mode, because that way you don't see the things that you saw in a game like Breath of the Wild. In Breath of the Wild, the voice sequences had varying lengths depending on which localization or language that you were playing it in. So as far as I remember, every speedrunner switched to German because German efficiency, we make things faster, and then the games skip through the dialogue a lot faster. So everyone just plays Breath of the Wild in German because that allows you to skip the voice sequences faster. Yeah. There was even a guy who made a video where he put all of the windows side by side, showing like the fastest to the slowest language. Yeah. And that's just silly. Why not just put in a speedrun mode and then skip all that stuff?
I understand why they don't do it, because their probably main target audience is not speedrunners. So I mean,
lies.
Lies. You should only cater to speedrunners. But yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. Like, I think any game should allow you to skip dialogue anyway. Like, if you don't want to read it, I have games where I just skip the dialogue. I'm like, I don't. This is shitty dialogue. I love the game, but I don't like the dialogue. Just press skip, and then it skips everything.
I once had a game where I
I
read the
think
dialogue.
Skyrim, you can't. You have a game where you read it? You're crazy,
Yeah, only once.
dude.
I
So
hate dialogue.
I don't know. I have had some games where it's a bit like a well written book. When if there's really well written dialogue, I will like it. But if it's bad, it might as well not be there. I think Skyrim's dialogue actually wasn't too good. It was okay, and because I did skip it always.
It was okay until I took an arrow to the knee.
Exactly. So, should we go forward to the lens of feedback? Because we already discussed it a bit.
Yes.
Do you want to take it or should I?
Yeah, sure. Lens number 57, the lens of feedback. The feedback a player gets from the game is many things. It can be judgment, reward, instruction, encouragement, and challenge. Use this lens to be sure your feedback loop is creating the experience you want by asking these questions at every moment in your game. What do players need to know at this moment? What do players want to know at this moment? What do you want players to feel at this moment, and how can you give feedback that creates that feeling? What do the players want to feel at this moment? Is there any opportunity for them to create a situation where they will feel that? What is the player's goal at this moment? What feedback will help them towards that goal? Using this lens takes some effort, since feedback in the game is continuous, but needs to be different in different situations. It takes a lot of mental effort to use this lens in every moment of your game, but it's time well spent because it will help guarantee that the game is clear, challenging, and rewarding. Indeed.
Yeah. Amen. Next. No, just kidding. In Firewatch dialogue is an essential part of the game. How would you skip it? Yeah, if it's essential and you cater towards people who love dialogue, then yes. But if it's the non-essential part of your game, you should allow for skipping. And then someone's saying, yes, well, if it's true speedrun, is it a true speedrun if you disable all the dialogue? That's true too. I mean, I think speedrunners love the fact that they figured out that they need to use the German version in a roundabout way, even if they give it a bit of crap. But now, looking at the lens of feedback, I think this is actually when reading it, even in the book, it kind of feels, how to say, like this is essential to a game. It's what makes it good or not, but it doesn't come through the text as strongly as I would like. But again, it's text; you can only do so much. So this is again something that comes. Hey Duke, thanks for the follow. Welcome to the company of Game Devs. So the feedback is the thing that, how to say, it's usually it can even take a boring game and make it super fun. Like if you look at, for example, Drunk Dev's stream, I don't know if you guys have checked them out. If you look at just his overlay, it is full with like visual feedback when stuff happens. And that makes it, crazily kind of fun and enjoyable to watch. And that's the thing, that it's kind of part of the enjoyment that you reward the player when he does something good.
Did your bot break? Sorry.
By butt? Did
your bot break? I did the Habibi, but nothing happened.
I'll check. It's Nightbot, so it's not mine. So, it is a way to think about how to reward players. And you just reward like as much as you can. Of course, so this is, again, rewards can be sound. They can be, the tactile feel of something, like how does it feel to do something. It can be like particle effects, and it's usually a combination of all of these. So a lot of times people just put particle effects. That's not enough. You always have to have a sound, and sound is very, very powerful. You shouldn't underestimate it. It actually a lot of times makes the feeling feel correct. Like if you're kicking a ball, even if it has a ball flying, only once you hear like does it feel like you're actually kicking a ball. Yeah, I heard butt first too. I was like, what's wrong with
Yeah.
my butt?
I do not inquire about the integrity of Bjorn's butt.
Lies.
No.
This is
Yeah, Meowsk says, imagine shooting a gun without sound. It is one of these things. I mean, in some games, like, they put in footstep sounds when you're walking or running. In other games, they don't do it. And it really depends on the situation. Is it necessary? Will it enhance the game, or will it create clutter if I put in these footstep sounds? But as you've seen in a lot of, like, this is very controversial, but with the loot crates, that is a super, super, super example of rewarding the player with the clicky sound when it opens up, like the unlocking sound and the shring sound and the glimmer and all of that. That is a very, very clear example of feedback, because it needs to feel juicy and epic. But something as simple as, if the player does an action and there is maybe a delay of half a second before something like the result of that action happens, then it's important to provide this feedback. You see it it started happening a lot in MMOs, for instance. Before World of Warcraft, a lot of MMOs had you waiting for X amount of seconds while doing things. Then eventually they started adding cast bars, so you could see on the bar, like, it's progressing. This is a form of feedback. And you see it in almost every game now. When you're doing something, there's a dial or a bar to give you feedback, because you're doing something that doesn't have immediate effect right now. So it's important for you as a designer to show your player that, don't worry, I know you clicked the button, something's about to happen.
yeah, and that's it. Exactly. Instant feedback, no delay. If there's a delay, like you discussed in MMOs with the casting bars, then show something. What else is good tips for this? It's basically just about, also I think it's also about creating the experience of the action as part of it. Yeah. So in a way, how can I make it more real than what it is? Because, if I make it realistic, it's not, when you kick a ball or you do something, you shoot a gun, it a game needs to exaggerate that feeling so you kind of get a similar feel too. Like,
Yeah.
Because your senses are, like, when you're playing it, for example, it depends on what you're playing. If you're playing on a mobile phone, you're experiencing the whole game through this small black slab, and using all these capabilities of, like, vibrating and sound and screen to its maximum, like, capabilities, just enhance the experience of the game.
It's kind of funny that you mentioned, vibrating and the gyro as well, because these are actually things that more and more mobile games are moving away from. I remember in the beginning with mobile games, it was like every game you played would be like this. Oh crap, the vibrator is like crazy in your hand. I was like, whoops, I just opened a bunch of stuff by shaking my phone. Apparently my phone has stuff that turns on if you shake it a lot. I didn't know that.
You undo, I think, on iPhone, but not when in this mode. But the thing is, yeah, I understand. Like, the gyro is not, that's not a feedback thing, right? That's an interface, right? A physical interface, and it's, again, yeah. I think it goes back to the chapter you didn't have, which is venue. A lot of the time when you're a mobile phone, you don't want to be like. But if you're like playing a VR game and you're like dark dungeon at home, maybe this kind of stuff is okay. Maybe that's the only case where it's somewhat okay. Even like Zelda, I didn't like when they had the puzzles where you have to do stuff like this. It's just.
Yeah, I'm with Team Number Cruncher on this one. He turns off vibrate option in games. I do too. I hate it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the vibrate action on the phone usually is too strong almost. And I would only, if I would put it in, I would only do it when there's like a huge explosion and something really like super important. But if you would have vibrate for every time I click, I would get very annoyed. So again, also, yeah, there is a sensory overload. And usually also when you play with these, you're holding it in one hand. Vibration can cause other, But for example, in the gamepad, it's totally different again. And that's a totally different situation where the vibrate is really good and it might, like when you're shooting a gun or there's an explosion, it can enhance the feeling. But this, again, you're correct. It's good to touch upon when I said vibrate with the phone is that don't do, because usually people use this in a public space or they might be, driving a car while no, they're not, of course not doing that.
Playing games while driving a car.
Yeah, don't do that, guys. It's super dangerous. But you're doing stuff.
You get really bad scores. Don't do it.
Exactly. You will suck at the game. The driving is secondary, but you will suck at the game. That's the important takeaway. No, but people are anyway doing things. Usually this is the second, they're playing, but they might be also at class or they might be walking to the bus stop or stuff like that. So then you actually have to cater to that experience. I hate touchscreen D-pad sticks. Yeah, I think everybody hates them. Because it's not tactile. And that's something I didn't cover here that much. A lot of people, especially if you go to a design school, they would talk about a lot about tactileness. So when you have a keyboard, why does it, the difference between using an on-screen keyboard versus using a physical keyboard, for example, is that the physical keyboard, you don't even have to look because you have tactile. You can feel where the keys are. You can feel when it goes down. Some keys even give you feedback when it has been pushed so you can release it, like a small click or even a sound. So these are tactile feedbacks. And it's actually something the iPhone removed. And a lot of times if you haven't played with a PC, it's hard to explain and understand. What is the tactile? And I think also the whole tactileness, it's also the difference between reading this book like this or on on the screen, is that here I have the tactile. Certain things is easier to do. I can, in a digital book, I can make bookmarks, but it's not going to have the same tactile feeling to it. So the kind of there's dimensions to things, right? So that's why D-pads, you don't know where your thumbs are. I actually have this thing, right? Which was supposed to have tactile feedback in form of vibration. It's the Steam controller, where they tried to make it feel like a mouse and that you would know where your, thing is, where your fingers are and how it's really dusty. That's how much I use it, so. So it's not good. I heard that the demo, the prototype they had was better than. Did this just have a sound? Anyway. So it is important, and that's why when you remove those physical aspects and ways, because again, remember, your senses are more than just seeing. You have touch, you have hearing, you have the, when something moves or strains in your muscle. It's something that they're really trying to do in for example, VR and stuff like that. That, if you get hit, you would even have a thing that kind of punches you here. There's a vest you can buy that, if you play a shooter game or something like that, you can actually feel things. If there's an explosion, you could feel it in your whole body. Again, something not you want to feel when you're playing in a mobile game in the bus. You're sounding like
yeah. Feeling the feeling of being shot in the shoulder is probably not what you want to do in public.
Yeah. But that's the thing. You can have also on phones that it vibrates when you click things, and it does give tactile feedback, but the depth of pressing a button tactile feedback is not on the same level. They have actually experimented on making some kind of virtual keyboard, which it could change. There's small bubbles that come up or electromagnetic fields where you can actually feel the buttons on the screen and it can adjust. But I think it's a killer for the battery or something, and why it's not. I haven't seen a consumer phone with that. Oh, hey Link, welcome to the company Game Devs. Cheers for the follow. Should we continue?
Yep.
I think you should read the next one because it's your favorite lens from the whole book.
Yes. It's the lens of juiciness. Lens number 58. To call an interface juicy might seem kind of silly, although it's very common to hear an interface with very little feedback described as dry. Juicy interfaces are fun the moment you pick them up. To maximize juiciness, ask yourself these questions. Is my interface giving the player continuous feedback for their actions? If not, why not? The second-order motion created by the actions of the player. Is second-order motion created by the action of the player? Is this motion powerful and interesting? Juicy systems reward the player many ways at once. When I give the player a reward, how many ways am I simultaneously rewarding them? Can I find more ways? So yeah, just to clarify, second-order motion is basically the reaction to something that you do when you're clicking a button. Like, for instance, a second-order motion for a juicy button could be that you click it and it kind of bursts with particles, or it could be if you move your mouse around, trail after it. That could also be second-order motion. And in the book, he gives an example of a Swiffer sweeping mop kind of thing, where when you turn the handle a little bit, it swivels the head, and that's described as second-order motion. Do you have any other examples of second-order motion?
No, I think those are good.
Yeah.
Yeah. We already discussed a bit the juiciness or in the feedback, but all of these kind of feed into each other.
Yeah.
One thing I forgot to mention in the feedback, a very important point, is that what do players need to know? I think that's more in the what is the feedback, and then the juiciness is more in the, all the stuff we just discussed with tactileness and stuff like that, and second order motion, which is, again, well, sound could be also, I guess, a second. Couldn't it? Do you think? Like, every time
it could. I mean, sound could be, but I think in general we talk about visual things when we talk about second order motion.
Yeah. Actually, I liked one example, by the way, the feedback that I forgot to mention now that we were discussing is, I think it was with the feedback one, right? Where he talks about basketball shortly. Or was it with the juice?
May do that book. In my book, he talks about a pedestrian button crossing thing.
I don't want to do it too early. But anyway, I'll discuss it now anyway, just because I now remember it. It might be out of order. But I really like, for example, his example of the basketball net. It doesn't really serve a purpose in the game. Like, it doesn't really... Like, the net itself doesn't help you play the game. Because if it's through, it's through. But what it does, it again gives you... It actually adds, in my opinion, juiciness to playing basketball. Because you can hear the sound. So it actually is a feedback system that, just by, like, I can throw the ball like this over my shoulder and I'll know just from hearing that. Like, of course I could just hit the net if I'm really sucky, but like, let's say it's an overarching arcing throw, I'll know it went through, or the audience knows and everybody knows. So you can visually see it and you can hear it, and I think that the hearing is the very important part of it. It actually adds juiciness to actually making a throw.
Yeah, and he also mentions in the book that it slows down the movement of the ball to make it easier to see that it actually went through. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't really, it's sports. It doesn't have RPG stats, so it doesn't really interest me. But I think it's an interesting thought if they put a net there to make it slow down the ball as it goes through.
I think how it probably developed was that they just had a ring there, and then they were like having a lot of arguments. Hey, did it go through? No, it did. No, it definitely didn't, and blah blah blah. And this was probably before like sensors and electronics and stuff like that. So then they put the net there, and then this argument stopped because people could visually see it. And that's what that type of thinking you need to do when you do make your game. Like, the net is not
elegant.
Crucial. It's elegant again, yeah. It makes it juicy. Not only, it gives kind of a tactile feel when the ball goes through instead of just going through empty space. It also visualizes, that, like you said, it's maybe slows down the ball a bit. At least you can kind of see it through the net, so you can see it in more dimensions that it actually went through. So it does definitely help, and it has nothing to do with the game. Again, I don't know if there's any rule that mentions the net. I don't know the official rules of it too well, but if there's anybody who knows, like, I think you can grab onto the net, maybe. I mean, again, it's not an important part of the game, but it enhances the game a lot. And that's the thing. Then when we go to digital games where we're Zelda or, well, not Zelda, we're Link, but...
I'm putting a net on my sword because it's juicy.
Yeah? Well, we put a trail on the sword. It's kind of the net of swords.
Yeah.
So that's why you put trail, so you can see where it went. You could just slash the sword, but it's not going to look as good without a trail.
Yeah, and the trail is also, at least in animation, it's a way to show more with less, so you can skip a bunch of frames and then smear out the sword, and that'll give you the feeling of motion.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing is, a lot of times it's easy. I like this basketball because it creates all of this it makes it very kind of, everybody who's played basketball or been near a basketball court or anything would know what we're talking about. And so it's so basic, and it's like the example. But instantly, when you go into a game, it becomes much harder to know these. And I see a lot of devs also being like, they don't notice this, that there's a lacking because they know how the game is played, right? They know exactly where the rewards are, what are good things, what are bad things. So giving feedback and really making it not only like giving feedback, but also juicy is so important, and rewarding the player for their actions.
Do you want to say hello to Candy Tree?
No.
Candy Tree says, "What is all this about? I just came in and I never watched this channel."
So welcome. We are the Game Dev Company, a company of game devs, and we are right now going through a book called The Art of Game Design. It's a book written by Jesse Schell, a book of lenses. So it's a collection of lenses. He made a book with a collection of lenses which help you design your game. So basically, the lenses are things you look through, kind of like this, like a binocular or a telescope. And if you then look through these different lenses, it should help you kind of detect flaws or help you build your game. I don't know if you want to add anything. Maybe that's...
Yeah, so, it's a bunch of really cool tools for when you're designing your game. You can look at your game. It helps you ask the right questions that allow you to get the proper answers in terms of how to improve your gameplay, but also stuff like how to improve your aesthetics, your graphics, or how to improve your interface, or even your idea early on, like what kind of theme, how do I unify my theme? So yeah, Candy Tree says game design, technical or gameplay wise, and it's kind of a combination of both. It's not so much the technical part because it's not the game development process. It's the theory of game design that we're going through at the moment.
Yeah, and game design in itself is the thing that defines the rules and how it's played. So it's usually more gameplay when referring, but you have also technical game design. But they're just under categories of that usually.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So we've reached in my book in first edition, it's lens number 59, the lens of channels and dimensions.
Channels and dimensions.
Yeah.
I don't have that.
What is it called in your book? You don't have that one?
No.
It's probably because it's bad.
I do have it. Yeah, I do have. Sorry, I forgot about it. But I have one here before that.
Oh, well, we should take that one then.
So the next lens in my book. So I have the second edition, just to clarify. So it's the newer version, and the Tasty has the first edition. They're both great books. So whichever you can get your hand on, it's fine. There's slight differences.
His is better. Second edition is better.
Third edition is even better, but it's not out yet.
Yeah, I want third edition.
Yeah, me too. We all want for the third edition. We need to redo this whole show next year with the third edition.
You say we, but I think you mean you.
What, me? What do you mean? I thought you would be here gladly going through every word of the book again. Like,
not the same book again.
first time we discussed this one kind of interfaces and then game feel. We could do that one.
That book, or actually, I think game feel too boring for people, but this one.
Yeah, that one is probably up next.
Level up.
Level up. It's more less intimidating, I would say.
Yeah.
So now
And
we
I
have-
think
Oh.
after level up could be a theory of fun, because a theory of fun it has more stories in it, so we get to talk more about stories and less about statistics.
What? Okay, so I have a lens here in between, which is not in the first edition, and it's the lens of primality. So it says, some actions and interfaces are so intuitive that animals were doing them hundreds of millions of years ago. To capture the power of primality, ask yourself these questions. What parts of my game are so primal an animal could play? Why? What parts of my game could be more primal? So, the whole primality lens is basically, it actually, when he, for example, references his mobile devices again, which we already discussed. Like they're not tactile. Now the question is like, why are we using, for example, except that they have big screens, but otherwise, why are we using touch screens versus using like a Nokia phone with huge pads, right? And like the whole keyboard down here, even if the tactile is better. And that is because using a touch screen is more primal.
Your phone is greasy.
I know, it's always greasy. Let me grease it up more. Sorry. Is it now less greasy?
I don't know.
Tasty's gonna be a big game developer in a year, so you'll be alone, Bjorn. That is true.
That is not true. That is totally not true.
I thought that he would still come and do this with me, even if he's a big game developer. Because
I will.
We can read bigger game development books then.
We'll be more busy in a year, so we'll read shorter books. Like in 1 year, we're reading Pixie books or something, like for
We're-
kids.
We're reading Donald Duck or something.
Yeah, Bobo makes a game.
Bobo makes it.
It's like a children's book about some guy who makes a game or something.
Bobo had a friend.
Bobo likes to
Bobo's
play
friend
games.
had a console.
Yeah.
He likes friend's console. Now he steals it. No. So the lens of primality. So again, like I was explaining, the greasy phone here from my hand grease. Ooh, fancy. So it's more primal to use a touchscreen because again, we use like if I want to, like even a child can use it, an animal could use this basically because it's very natural for us to be like, I want that. That's what I want. It's how we even use keyboards. I want to press the O button. I look at it and then I press it with the finger. Of course, then with the tactileness, I don't have to look at the keyboard anymore. But it makes it so you don't have to even teach the player or user anything. So, and this is a thing that this is just one example of primality. So, and then there's probably even degrees of primality I would argue. Like, the primality doesn't only have to actually, which is interesting. He discusses something here that is not necessarily even the interface, which is primality would be, for example, also other elements in your game. Like, for probably why, for example, games that have a lot of like gather fruit-like items, fight a threatening enemy, find your way through an unfamiliar environment, overcome obstacles to get to a mate, how scientists say rescue the princess. I think that's a joke Tasty would have appreciated when he read it. Anyway, so the idea that, there's like, there's primal urges, again, going to the hierarchy of, needs, or what is called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that, the more primal things are stuff that we are, more connected
We need
with.
those.
Yeah, exactly. Our reptilian brain is like in tune with that. So there's a reason that that type of experiences or that type of things entertain us more than something that's very like outside of that spectrum. So it's less primal. Most probably, might not be as enjoyable. Like there's a reason why we like games where we kind of fight each other because it's a primal thing again. But he also talks about the touchscreen and the primal thing of that. But it's kind of interesting because it kind of, now in retrospect, now that I'm discussing it, it kind of feels glued on to this chapter. I would have expected this primal lens like earlier, like 5-6 chapters ago. I don't know.
Sorry, typing.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. And of course, so we're indie devs. I've published games, but not under my own name. So they're not my games. They're somebody else's game that I worked on. But I'm now working on my first title to release just under my own name, or maybe also have, of course, people collaborating. Like Starlight Skies has done stuff for it.
Yeah,
And
I've done
Tasty's laughed at
graphics
it.
I've done graphics for other people's games. There's one right now it's on Steam, early access. It's called Nightfall, made by another streamer here called Krasenstein. I did some graphics for that for the intro and loading screens, and then I do my own stuff, which I wouldn't say publish because I make a game and then I put it up on a platform or put it out for free. I primarily make games because I enjoy it, and I primarily make games because I like to experiment and figure out new things. So if the stuff I make is economically viable or not, it's not really that big of a concern to me at the moment.
Yeah. And I've also finished, like, I did my master's in game design and production, so I'm also have a formal education in this. Where we, for example, had to read this book, and that was some years ago. Should we move on? I don't know if there's anything. The
Yeah.
primality thing was quite short. That was basically the idea. Like, look, think about the primality. Is it a primal thing? Can you add primality, etc.?
I think it's really important though, and I think it's a good thing that because I think looking at Maslow's pyramid of needs makes you realize why survival games became so popular. They've existed. I mean, we've had the game with Caravan. I forgot what it's called. Trail something. Yeah. Oregon Trail. You know, we've had that genre for years, but it's always been sort of a text-based game or a point-and-click style game where the player wants to survive. Woohoo! Resub from Super Jesse. That's awesome.
You kept the streak. Yeah, he was nervous because he had some PayPal problems. Dude.
Yeah.
Guys, some hype in chat. I even failed my hype. Have some failed hype in chat. Thank you, Jesse, for supporting our stream.
Fail hype?
Fail hype.
Fail hype-oo.
Hype-oo.
Well, I can't even spell it.
You fail at the fail hype.
Yeah, I ended up writing like Fali Hippo or something.
You should have posted it.
No, I deleted it. It was wrong. It was bad. Terror bad.
Bad tasty.
Yeah.
Thank you, dude. Much love.
So, I have lens number 50, channels and dimensions.
Yep, I have the same one. So it's just lens 66. Ooh.
All right. So
there we go.
The lens of
proper
channels. Hype. Oh, nice. The lens of channels and dimensions. Choosing how to map game information to channels and dimensions is the heart of designing your game interface. Use this lens to make sure you do it thoughtfully and well. Ask yourself these questions. What data needs to travel to and from the player? Which data are most important? What channels do I have available to transmit this data? Which channels are most appropriate for which data and why? Which dimensions are available on the different channels? And how should I use those dimensions? So, I guess this lens is one of these lenses you kind of need to explain what a channel is and what a dimension is.
Yeah. So going to the next lens. No, just kidding.
No, but like Um, it's basically a case of the transition from the virtual interface, which is like stuff in game on screen. It's stuff that's not part of the game world, but it's kind of layered on top of it. How
Yeah.
does that make it from the world to the virtual interface to the physical output, which is the
Yeah.
monitor or whatever it is that the player sees? Um,
I
and
actually, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I mean, the way that I see it, like channels are, it's kind of areas on your screen. Like if you look at Bjorn's stream right now, you know, my box is one channel, Bjorn's box is a
Two
channel.
channels?
Then exactly, and then below us we have, it says Game Design Book Club. That would be considered maybe the title channel. And then just below that, we've got where it says The Art of Game Design by Jesse Schell. That would be considered a subtitle channel. Then we've got name channels. We've got top right corner where it says Super Jesse Resub X5 and shout out to Link 1607 follow and Duke 1102 follow. That would be the notification channel. So you kind of you divide your
If you
screen
look
into
at Bjorn's
channels.
stream. If you look at it.
Yeah, but I mean, like some people would be doing other
You,
things, and not
you
looking
could
at us, which is fine. You
you
can
could
totally be
argue
lurking.
you could argue that your voice is one channel, my voice is another channel, because we do communicate information through our voices.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Because sound effects and can be a channel as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, our voices are channels too. Nice catch.
I really
Good you
like
pointed that out.
I really like how he kind of breaks it apart here, which is he first lists just the things that he would have in this game, like number of roomies, number of keys, health, immediate
Yeah.
surroundings, other inventory, current weapon, current treasure, whatever. Then what he does is that he takes them into and puts them in 3 categories. So the categories are need to know every moment, like all
Yeah.
the time, need to glance at from time to time while playing, and then need to know only on occasion. So for example, he in this example says need to know every moment is immediate surroundings.
Yeah.
For example,
And he's talking about The Legend of Zelda.
yeah, Legend of Zelda is the example here. Then need to glance at from time to time while playing is number of rubies, number of keys, health, current weapon, current treasure. And then need to know only on occasion is other inventory. And then what he does is like, okay, list channels. So like again, places in the screen. So let's look at the need to know at every moment. Let's put that in the center of the screen. Let's well, actually, I skipped kind of a step there, but anyway, you can list different places where
Not on my book. You didn't skip anything in my book.
so you list the channels like top center of the screen, bottom right. We'll have stuff. We'll have my avatar. We'll have game sound effects, game music, the border of the game screen, the chest of the approaching enemy, the world balloon over character's head, blah 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 blah. And then you map that information to the channels. So saying like, okay, the thing that's very important. Let's put that in the middle, center. Things that we need to glance at, let's group them, with, for example, as a dashboard up top of the screen. And then, let's put actually the other inventory in a totally different view. You have to press start to open it or something.
There's a ghetto screenshot.
Ghetto screen. Actually, I have it all on one page. Mine is nice. Mine has colors. Look at this.
It has colors? Colors were not invented in first edition of my book.
Mine has like another type of feedback, and that is actually we can use that to explain dimensions. So dimension is that, like, let's say he uses the when the character gets hit, right? Usually you can have like a number floating away. Now you can basically tell a lot of information with just that number, because you can map information into the color, the size, the font, the actual number. So remember, guys, that all of these things are like, you can look at piece of information, you can map things to it. So let's say like you do a lot of damage, maybe you make the number red, and then when you do small amounts of damage, you do green. So or maybe it's a critical, Like you can map information into those numbers. Or he also has like where, for example, white numbers, maybe you did friendly damage, and red you did, so you have to think about them, and you also have to teach the player. The more intricate your system is, the more you have to then teach what that means.
Yeah, we see that a lot in games. Like, if green numbers are usually something that we consider healing, red numbers damage on ourselves, something negative to us, and if the number's shaking or it's glowing or growing, it's a critical hit or something important.
Yeah.
So you can really, really tell your player a lot by using these simple things.
And then another important thing. So now, if you understand dimensions, so meaning that everything has several dimensions, you could even think it as if you're a programmer, like you would have different attributes or properties underneath your class that is attached to it, like color, size, font. So these are the dimensions you could add. An important thing that I don't think he mentions here is that it's very important to make sure you're consistent with your dimensions. So let's say you're using white for friendly fire and red for like enemy fire. You need to then, if there's something else that does similar, like then red has now a meaning in your game, and you need to make sure that if you use red other places, that it's not in contrast with what you used red for in another part of your game. So I've had games where, for example, sometimes green is good, sometimes red is good, and then the player just gets confused. So be consistent in how you use these dimensions throughout your game, because people will then anyway kind of attach meaning to that.
Yeah. Or something as simple as if your player moves right out of the screen, have him appear on the left side of the next screen. It's like
Yeah.
we've seen it in some games where the character moves out the screen to the right and then he appears at the top on the next screen, and it's just, that's not consistency. Try to be consistent.
No. Yeah, that's more with like flow. Like even in when they do, if you ever studied video filming and stuff like that, there's a lot of rules how the eye move and how you. It actually has also to do with the Gestalt, how you can attach, like how, because again, in a way you could argue that your brain has no idea that these two things, even if it's the same icon, that's the only thing, but you don't know that if it comes up from here that it actually was the same character. It might be a totally different character. Like by having the same motion from the left screen, your brain automatically on a hardware level will attach that that's the same object, even if it jumped a bit on the screen.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's not like related as such to this. It just reminded me about consistency because I've seen a couple of games lately where, character moves in on one side and comes out in a different, like, why did you allow this, you silly developer?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you teach your players something, then don't flip it around unless you have an extremely good reason.
Yeah.
So be consistent with your dimensions, and by dimensions we're talking about depth of color, use of color, things like that.
Yeah. It's the same thing. Like, actually, it was a really interesting talk. There's something called Games First. It's a developer conference, and there's a guy who basically worked for Disney and also make games, just like Jesse. But he was the art director, and even there, like when you think about the visuals, like enemies versus like if you make Battlefield, you will have like the Axis versus Alliance, and then you have certain logos. So maybe like you might even make stuff like where the enemies is more square and the good guys are more round or something like that. And you can even like through that, like if you see a building and it has round corners, your brain will instantly go, oh, that's probably a good guy base. Whereas if you see a square base, and again, you could do it the right other way around too, that square is good. I mean, that's not the point. The point is that you can actually embed information in so many ways and kind of hint at things. You could even hint at things like maybe there's a bad guy that has rounded corners. Maybe he's a spy for the good guys just because he's designed and uses a different type of visual language throughout it. And that was super interesting when he discussed there how he embedded a lot of this information on many layers throughout the thing, like a consistency. Like in that game he was explaining, it was like kind of a, it wasn't Russia versus America, but it clearly was. But it doesn't say that in the game. But you kind of have that kind of Russian like stoicistic kind of feeling on the enemy side, and then the Americans have more like, the eagle and roundness and blue and stuff like that. So you have red versus blue, and then the consistency about that. It's very important because otherwise the player will get confused. And that's something I see a lot of games, especially when people make just like even Space Invaders, the basic, or something like that, a space shooter. And then they misuse kind of iconography. Like they misuse kind of shapes where you don't know, is that a power up or a power down? You don't know if it's the enemy or the good guy. It's just a different thing. And that clearly shows that the developer hasn't put in like a lot of thought into what they made. Anyway, rant ended.
Yeah, if you look at like study arts, you'll also see, especially if you study stuff like character design, you'll meet this a lot. Whereas like spiky things usually shows stuff that we don't like or we're afraid of.
Yeah.
Even our instincts are like, we don't want to touch like spiders and things with creepy, crawly, sticky, pointy things. And a teddy bear is fluffy and roundish.
Yeah.
We like that. We don't sell children's toys that look like a cactus unless it's like a really cute one, but then it wouldn't really be a cactus anymore.
That almost goes back to the primal lens, right? Those are primal things that, we try to avoid sharp things. We don't want it to puncture our skin.
Exactly.
I mean, maybe if we were, rhinos, we wouldn't care as much. Maybe our primal instincts.
But even rhinos have feelings.
No, they don't. They just have a pointy stick and they go point it at everybody. Darn rhinos.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
We are up to the lens of modes.
Yeah, and it actually discusses a bit similar type of thing, but from the point of view of modes. Do you want me to read it? This is my turn.
Yeah, sure.
So this is lens 67. Which one is it for you?
It's lens 60 in the first edition book.
Okay. So, an interface of any complexity is going to require modes. To make sure your modes make the player feel powerful and in control, and do not confuse or overwhelm, ask yourself these questions. What modes do I need in my game? Why? Can any modes be collapsed or combined? Are there any modes overlapping? If so, can I put them on different input channels? When the game changes modes, how does the player know that? Can the game communicate the mode change in more than one way? So that's the whole lens. So the idea is that, for example, again, modes could be switching from a plane to a tank. It could be from from running to jumping into driving a car. So your controls change, right? If you drive a car, it's not your left stick, for example, is never mapped exactly same. Suddenly you're turning like a radius or like rotation, whereas when running, you're just running kind of in a direction, right? So you're not turning a wheel in a way. So that's different modes. Now, if it's very different, he uses the example here, for example, that you're running when you're running around. If you press down A and then use the left stick, it's throwing. So you throw an item. Then if you go in the car, would it also throw then? But then you have to steer the car at the same time. That might break the thing. So then maybe making so to throw and use the right thumbstick instead might be better. So you put it on another channel, meaning it doesn't change how you play it.
Yeah. But this mode thing can also be something visual. When you get into the water in Super Mario, for instance, his animations, his visual appearance changes, and that gives you a visual clue that, oh, now the controls are different. There's a different mode. My jumping button no longer makes me jump as much as it now makes me kind of bob upwards. Moika plays. Yes, we are,
Yeah, we're still reading
but we're
some.
halfway through.
Yeah, a bit
Yay.
more. I mean, page count. In
Okay.
chapter count, we're halfway, I would say. At least in my edition. He probably removed
I
some.
didn't even look at chapter or page count. I did like old school, put the book together like that and looked at it, and I was like, yeah, we're kind of halfway through.
If it isn't Bjorn, if it isn't Darny. What's up, dude?
Darny Age.
So yeah, but I would argue even that Mario, the modes are very, like, it does do a mode change, but it's very similar. When you press the jump, right, it goes upwards, you propel
Yeah,
upwards,
okay,
and
well,
swimming, you do the same. Like, it's a good example still, but like, there even the changes are very minute, so, you know, you don't have to do that much of visual communication that, hey guys, you need to play totally differently now.
That's true. I mean, okay, so let's go to shooting. When you pick up the power flower, he changes his costume, and you can see that you're in a different mode now. Your B button still makes you sprint like it always did, but now it also shoots when you press it the first time. So that's a change of mode where you're basically doing the same thing that you did before, but it adds an extra action or an extra, like a verb, onto your button.
Exactly, yeah.
Whoops.
But the thing that makes it mostly confusing is like, what would be like a good example? Like, let's say you would have a game and you would have like left stick to run around, right? And then you enter a car and suddenly you would use right stick to steer it or move around. That would be maybe confusing.
And pointless, because you can't really run when you're in the car, so you might as well just keep on using the left stick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then how do you communicate that, like, if there was a change? And actually you might actually, when running around, use the trigger to shoot, but when you're driving the car, maybe you're accelerating, you know? But
Yeah.
actually this is interesting. I think GTA does a good job, but I'm trying to think, what do they actually do to communicate this shift of modes when you enter different things? Or in Battlefield, they don't actually do that much, except that you're actually inside of a huge 3D model. But
yeah, I was just about to say, I mean, they show it with a visual. You know, you get visual feedback that you're moving into the car, and you can visually see, okay, I am no longer controlling my human being. I am now controlling a car because I can't see my human being, but I can see the car. And the game kind of tells you whatever you are looking at, whenever the camera is right behind something, that is what you're controlling. So whether you are in a tank or a plane or the character, that's what you're controlling, because you're always looking at the back of that thing that you're controlling.
yeah, that's true. You always know, kind of, but you would still have to memorize the difference if they were. I think what they do a lot is that the change is very minor in mode.
Yeah.
The biggest
Darny is a Super Saiyan now.
He is.
I'm too old for Dragon Ball Z. Sorry.
You're too old.
Yeah, I never watched it, but I heard that like you could watch 7 episodes and the fight would still be going on. Like it, I heard something about fights being super long in that series.
They're Super Saiyan.
Oh, super serious.
So the modes thing, like, I think most games that have a lot of mode changes, like actually in GTA, I think you press a button, I don't remember which one, and you lean out of the car window and you can then suddenly shoot again. But again, you're still driving the car with the left stick, keeping that. But the right stick now you can aim the gun, right?
Yeah, we're talking about GTA 1.
No.
I'm just kidding. I know you're probably
We're talking about GTA 2, of course. Who plays GTA
which is
1?
essentially the same, except it has more Hare Krishna people walking on the sidewalk.
How dare you? It's totally different. In GTA 2, you could fart and burp.
I don't remember that. I just remember spending more time with my car roads. But it was a fun game. I was actually a bit sad when it switched from top-down 2D mode to the third-person 3D view. And it's not because I'm old and grumpy. It's just that
You're old and grumpy.
yeah, I'm old and grumpy.
Oh,
No, it's just that I felt it was more simple, and it was, I don't know, it felt a bit more like a puzzle game when you're seeing things from above and you're kind of calculating in your mind, will I be able to hit these in a succession? Whereas when you're seeing it in 3D, you kind of see less of the world in a way. But yeah, I guess it's a case of just me.
Sorry, answering to Darnie. Yeah.
Dragon Ball Z. Is it Z or Z?
Z?
One-
Z? I don't know. It's Z.
One language, I don't remember. It's like Americans say Z, or
Yeah, it
Brits
depends.
say the opposite.
And Australians say Barbie. No, what? No.
Zay.
Oh, now we insulted our whole Australian audience.
You can insult Australians.
That is.
They have an
They're awesome.
iron will. They are awesome, and they don't care.
It's Z, but actually, DV Zombie says it's Z. But if depending
it
where you
Z?
come, you would read it. It's Z. So
Yeah, I've always said Z because in Danish, the letter is called sit. So I always said Z, but I know a lot of people say Z.
I think I've heard it said like the name of the anime mostly like Dragon Ball Z, because I think also, well, maybe it's because they're mostly Americans.
Dragon Ball Z. I'm
That's the
12.
Now
Yeah,
for the mature
Microlight
part.
says in Poland you would read it Z.
Yeah.
Set.
Well, in Finnish it would be Zeta,
Zeta.
which makes it even like we read out everything. It's like we even
Yeah,
put
so
there
in
like
Finnish
letters
it's-
that don't exist there, like
Yeah,
A.
in Finnish it would be Dragon Ball Zeta. On a scale of 1 to 5, how good was that Finnish impression? Was it really bad? I didn't
was quite
roll
bad.
enough on the R, did
Yeah,
I?
you didn't.
I should have been like Dragon Ball Zeta.
Yeah, I think I didn't say this here. I was today at a doctoral dissertation, and it was in English. And then the guy who was the opponent, so the guy who kind of was there to ask questions from the guy who was finishing his doctors, he was reading English, and I couldn't understand one word. He was like, I was like, okay, I hope somebody understands what he's talking about. Dragon Ball Z. Oh.
Yes, it's a Japanese pronunciation.
Well, in Japan, it's also Makuru Donaldsodu. It's like Finnish. They
Yeah.
add like 600 things into it.
Yeah, it is kind of funny that they put the U at the end of a lot of. It's usually letters that they have trouble pronouncing, like the L turns into an R, and then they put a U at the end of it for some reason.
I don't think Swedish people roll the R as much as Finnish, but they still do, but not as much.
Yeah, they still
Rulla,
say stuff
rulla.
like jättebra. So they do kind of roll the R's there.
So like rulla,
But when-
rulla, or
Yeah.
but in Finnish
rulla.
it's like perr. It's like sheep. It's sharper in Finnish. It's like prr, whereas it's more in Swedish.
Yeah.
More prr. Anyway,
Yeah.
We're
it's
going
kind of
very off
funny though
topic.
when you speak Swedish because you have the Moomin Swedish. And you're like,
I have my own language from
Yeah,
it,
you're
my own cartoon.
jag heter Björn. Jag pratar Moomin-svenska.
That's
That's how
actually
you
quite
sound.
good. That's actually
Thank
quite
you.
good. Yeah, that was better
you.
in Finnish, I would say.
You're a good teacher. I learned.
Yeah,
Sorry,
sure.
Mr. Croatian. He says we're off topic, and he's right. And we apologize.
Yeah, actually, the Wookiee, the new guy. No. What's his face? Come on, I can't. This is
The new
embarrassing.
guy, I don't know what they call it, but he's the one that like in the trailer goes. "Brrr, brrr."
No, I don't know
Is that
about
the one
him.
you mean?
No,
Oh.
I mean, what's his face?
Is it a Star Wars character?
Borg. Yeah, Star Wars. It's the main characters. One of the. What's his face? Come on. This is embarrassing. Who are you? Why are you in my stream? What am I doing? That's what I'm feeling, man. Chewbacca, exactly. He's played by a
What?
Finnish guy.
Why did you call him new character? He's not Chewbacca.
No. He's not new. Sorry, I didn't mean
okay.
new character. I meant main character.
I quit.
Yeah.
And then your shirt says don't
Wookiee,
quit.
not Ewok. Is he an Ewok? Wookiee?
Chewbacca is a Wookiee.
Yeah, that's what
And
I thought.
he is from a
Ewoks
planet
are the
called
small
Kashyyyk,
guys.
or something like that.
Yeah. So
Java knows all these things.
He's played by a Finnish guy. That's what I was gonna say. So maybe you know him goes. "Rrrr." Maybe they don't have to do like that. He can roll the R's properly.
Yeah.
Game Dev Lonely. That would be a great emote. Game Dev Lonely here. Yeah. Forever Game Dev Lonely.
Yeah,
Forever
Super
alone.
Jesse says the new creature is a porg. And that's the little guy in the trailer who goes, "Wah, wah, wah, wah."
Oh, I haven't seen the trailer. Don't spoil it, guys.
It's not a spoiler.
I don't
It's
wanna-
like they get scared and there's a tiny little thing that looks like a rabbit that goes screech,
Oh, no.
screech, and that's it.
Now I know. Now I don't want to watch it anymore. It's like
It doesn't have anything to do with the story.
yeah, just like what's his face from episode 1 or whatever. What
It's
is it?
that little guy is probably only there because they need something new to sell as a
No.
toy. And I think BB-8 was a horrible
They made him
design
the-
choice.
They made him the main character of the whole thing, and now this guy going
It's
for the
better
whole
than Jar Jar Binks.
No, it's they're doing it all over again. They want to be cute so that they get the young audience, and they're gonna fail again. They
I don't know
understand.
what this means, but Mr. Creation says, "I am Root."
Yeah, you forgot a G there. Or
Well,
was it a
maybe
programming
he
error?
is just Root without.
Yeah, he
the
is.
G.
He's rooting us right now. The stream is gonna go down.
Yeah.
Should we go to the next chapter?
Yes, chapter 14 in my book.
Yep, and 16 in mine. It's
Yep.
actually one of my favorite chapters. I would definitely could say that. And the
Yeah.
chapter is named "Experiences Can Be Judged by Their Interest Curves."
Yeah, and I think the
Chapter
reason
name's
why
actually weird, but anyway, go ahead.
I think the reason why I feel that this is one of the more important chapters is because it doesn't only apply to game design. This thing applies to writing a story, having a speech, or performing on stage. And I think that's why
Being
it's
on
really
a
neat.
stream.
Being on a stream as well. And I will admit, I'm not following an interest curve.
Oh my god! I thought you were leaving the big reveal to the end. We discussed this, Tasty. You were supposed to throw your shirt off and dance, and there's
I
the
can
whole
throw my
party
shirt
going.
off. I'm wearing an undershirt that's also black.
That's the
That would be-
reveal.
That would be super boring. It's like taking
No,
off
no.
the shirt and it's like, look, I'm naked underneath my.
No, I like that.
Oh,
That's
never mind.
like it doesn't matter how many like you just keep taking off shirts, but there's always another shirt underneath.
Yeah.
Woo! Yeah, you actually would be very rich if you were a stripper. You could just keep on taking off clothes, and people are throwing more money. Like, when is this gonna end?
I don't think that's how it works. They'd be like, if he doesn't show skin, I'm out of here.
No. It's the longer, like it's the what's it called the. Yeah,
The
yeah,
anticipation.
exactly. You're building up like for the reveal of you leaving the stage, and everybody be like, "Boo!"
Yeah.
Interest curve. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so basically to kind of describe it really, really fast, the interest curve is when you kind of draw a curve to show the places in your whatever it is you're doing that are interesting and the places that may not be interesting. And by doing that, this kind of allows you to get a visual feel for the progression of this thing. It's kind of similar to what we were talking about a few chapters ago, the flow.
Yep.
Where it kind of goes up and down and up and down. And basically it's about keeping the player interested in whatever is going on here. But it's also about figuring out what is interesting to the player. And if we fast forward to the lens, because that's like really fun lens of the interest curve.
Yep.
Do you want to?
Oh, interest curve. I
Uh,
have actually one in between here.
Okay, you do that one then,
Okay.
because I don't have it. So
Yeah, the lens of the interest curve I'm gonna add here, like, is that if you guys are on Tuesdays here and we're doing the market research part, and I look at a trailer and I give them a bit of slack. Usually it's because of their interest curve. So they start off maybe a bit boring, or then actually what I more commonly like, it's like boom 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 all the time, and then it kind of gets tiring where you're just like, I just want to rest and go to sleep watching this. So you kind of,
Yeah.
or then they start off, kind of lackluster and try to build it up, but it doesn't really kind of, it just becomes it's too slow. So
it's like 9 out of 10 trailers you see on the Tuesday show. You're like, this is boring trailer. Next, skip, fast forward, skip. This trailer's crap. And then
I mean, they should just read this chapter, and their trailer would already be better, like from a structural point of view. And this is classical, right? This interest curve, how they built, they're like going back to Aristotle in like ancient Greece or whatever, or go back to. It's something that's reoccurring in stories in the Western world for like ages and ages and ages, and also other cultures. So, going to the first lens I have here, which is lens 68, the lens of moments. Memorable moments are stars that make up the constellation of your interest curve. To chart what is most important, ask yourself these questions. What are the key moments in my game? How can I make each moment as powerful as possible? So an interest curve can look like, for example, he had some examples. There's an interest curve. This was his example of a bad one, where it just builds up kind of linearly here. And then a good one, they change the interest curve to this, which is, it has a peak there in the beginning, and then it kind of builds up to a big reveal. It is more entertaining. You see that all over in most movies, and they have a big bang in the beginning, like not a huge one, but like a ooh, and then it kind of goes back to down, and you're like, okay, now comes the bit quieter part, and then it builds up to the huge, like, crazy, where he blows up the Death Star or something.
Yeah, the thing you're talking about at the beginning, I think he calls it the hook. Like, you want to hook your audience because they start out with some level of interest, otherwise they wouldn't be there. They wouldn't be playing your game if they weren't kind of interested in it already. So you need to top that a bit and reward their interest. And the same thing is if you're like a scene performer, you don't go in to watch a burlesque show unless you were interested in seeing the costume designs, obviously. So they better reward you. Super Jesse says, they blow up the Death Star? Spoilers!
There is a Death Star? More spoilers! The hook is very important. And I actually think that, like Ryan Clark, the guy who made Crypt of the Necrodancer and involved in many other games from Clyde Entertainment, he also has this article on Gamasutra where he talks about hooks. And you could even say that they're basically the same thing. He also talks about having as many hooks as possible. Then again, how Jesse uses it is the beginning hook. So to just clarify, if you read that article, how Jesse kind of explains here is like the hook in the beginning to kind of pique the interest. And then you have kind of a base to build on to like start slowly building up to, something big. Because if you start very like silently and then like that's actually what happens with a lot of games is that they make the the whole tutorial, and the tutorial is kind of like blah 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 blah, Snorefest, and then then the game starts building in difficulty, and it's just there's no like big thing there. So having a big reveal, like that's why a lot of games have, like he says here, that cutscene in the beginning of games, like boom, and then there's a guy walking in the middle of the desert and he's eating a falafel, and then a dragon comes and swoops in and kills him or something. I don't know.
You also see it in a lot of newer games, especially they'll give you a character that's like fully decked out with super awesome gear, and he has all the abilities and everything's super awesome. And then you play through kind of a tutorial with like a character that just destroys everything around him, and it's like awesome and crazy, and then as you get towards the end of the tutorial, you're killed by the evil boss or something, and then you wake up without your gear and all that, and you kind of have to work back at it. A lot of games do this, and it does kind of work because people have reached a point where they sort of expect, obviously this was bound to happen, but there is actually one of the lenses we talked about a while ago where it says, don't take away stuff from your players. Don't steal their rewards. But I guess since you start the game with the abilities, you don't really feel that stuff was taken away from you in the same sense as if you had earned it. But yeah, a lot of games do that now where you start off with a lot of stuff because it's interesting and it's scary, crazy, cool, and then it takes it away.
Yeah. Here's, by the way, a good interest curve just to show, kind of as an example. And then what he also argues is that, which of course we have no proof of, but he argues that a lot of...
That is a tasty graph.
That is a tasty... This is what tasty graph is all about. The
Yes.
ABCDs. But then here is what usually people end up, even if they know what graph they want to have, they delay too much there's like a huge boring part, and then after there's a small reveal, and then it just keeps on going down. And it doesn't mean that, again, this is an interest curve, so it might be that the game doesn't change at all, so it just becomes more and more boring. And then at some point there is another big reveal, but it's too late. It's already past. And then, people quit here a lot of the time. And actually, looking at stats in playtime, I know by a fact that it's usually 20 minutes in the game when they, have that. Another example he has, there's a lot of text here, we're not going to cover it all. But you can see here is that this is an example of interest curve they had in one of their games. They were trying to get that perfect interest curve, etc. But then they had this kind of silent part here. You can see oh, nothing is happening. And then actually... But then they had this whole discussion. He says that this was when he was working at Disney, that, he wanted to cut that part out, but they already put a lot of effort into it. So they're like, we don't want to remove it because we put so much effort. And then the guy who led the project back then, basically what he decided was just that, let's make a skip section that people can skip. And then when they released it and people played it, he said that the people, because this is again for Disney for a ride, so the people who
it's
gave...
a VR ride.
Yeah, exactly. So when the people got to that part, the guy who helps them, right, there's always a guy, he would lean in and whisper, say go use the skip. And then they would ask him, why does he do that? He says people who does the skip usually has a better time of the ride. Meaning most probably they should just have cut it out, even if they put all that work.
But the boss was like, no, we spent money on it, so let's keep it.
Yeah, he doesn't actually talk bad about the boss, but it kind of is between the lines that they should have cut it out.
Oh yeah, I mean that's what in my book it really definitely says that he wanted to cut, but that was not an option, so it had to stay.
Oh, nice, Drew.
I was just about to say. Drew says, nice on Gamma about this sort of hook design, like the opening sequence in Cannibalt. His friend Aaron of Flipfly wrote it based on his interview with Saltzman. I'm assuming Saltzman might be the creator of Cannibalt. Those guys like to call it generous design because it gives you more wow right up front to let you know that more wow is ahead later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's basically, you could also put it in terms of I'm not invested in the game in the beginning, so you require me to do stuff, I'm not going to be willing to do it. It's a bit like if someone tells me to clean my room, I'll be like, I'm not really invested in that. But then someone gives me chocolate and then says you'll get the rest of the chocolate after you clean a room, I'll be much more motivated to clean my room. It's a very stupid example, but
no, it's a true story.
Yeah. Tasty has I always give Tasty some chocolate, and then he appears on the stream and I say, you'll get the rest of the chocolate after the stream is over.
Yeah.
And we covered all the lenses. But it's true, it's kind
I'm
of
lactose intolerant, so I don't know why he sends me chocolate, but okay.
Yeah. He hates chocolate and it kills him slowly. But the idea is the whole it's kind of also goes into the investment, right? When you see something cool, you're instantly more invested. You might be also more interested in the character, depending on how you do it.
Mr. Croatian wants chocolate too.
Sorry, guys. We're all out of chocolate. I sent it all to Tasty. I'm sorry. Don't tell him, though. He
Devious
doesn't know that we
Oatmeal.
already sent it.
Devious Oatmeal says a good example is Castle Crashers. The game starts with 4 seconds of party and really bad music before the door gets knocked down, and then you rush out and fight.
Yeah.
I remember like the first time I played it, I was like, what is this stupid music? And then I ran over and I think I hit one of the waiters or something. Like there's a lady, you could just smack her or something, or there's a barrel or something. I don't know. I just hit stuff when I'm bored.
Domestic abuse.
No, I abuse anyone. It's like I play game on board, I hit you. I play Destiny 2 as a melee character, which is a shooter game, and I hit people in the game.
You hate people, period.
No, I hit people. I hit them.
Oh. So
Actually, it's because I found an item that's really cheap. Every time you kill a monster, it applies your damage, and then it stacks up to 5 times. So after you kill 5 enemies, you basically one-shot things.
Yeah.
With your punch.
So before we go to the lens, maybe I can still show the fractal structure thing. So let's say you're making a game that's a bit longer. It's not like a 5-minute experience or something, or 30-minute or a 2-hour. You can see it here. So you can also build these, like you have the overall, and then you have within those small things. Like, so you have the if you look at the whole as a holistic interest curve, it has this basic similar, like basic shape. But when you zoom in into one of those peaks, it also has its own interest curve. So you can build it up in that way, which is a cool tip, I think. Do you want to read the lens, or should I?
Yeah. Hang on a sec. Let me see if I can find it.
Okay.
Is it the lens of the interest curve?
Yeah, now we're at that. Yeah.
Awesome. In my book, it's lens number 61. In your book, it's lens number 7,345,000.
It's the best.
69.
Number.
The
7,069,000.
of the interest curve. Exactly what captivates the human mind often seems different for every person, but the most pleasurable patterns of that captivation are remarkably similar for everyone. To see how a player's interest in your experience changes over time, ask yourself these questions. If I draw an interest curve of my experience, how is it generally shaped? Does it have a hook? Does it have gradually rising interest, punctuated by periods of rest? Is there a grand finale more interesting than everything else? What changes would give me a better interest curve? Is there a fractal structure to my interest curve? And should there be? Do my intuitions about the interest curve match the observed interest of the players? If I ask playtesters to draw an interest curve, what does it look like? Since all players are different, you may find it quite useful to the interest curve and lens number 16, the lens of the player, at the same time, creating a unique interest curve for each of the types of players your game is trying to reach. Yes.
Yeah, so you cut out there just for a sec, so I'll just reread that section. You
Oh,
might find quite
crap.
useful to use the lens of interest curve and the lens of the player. That's what's just... So basically, he just says there that you can build different interest curve for different types of players. If you have a more casual player or more hardcore, or, you know, you shouldn't, of course, try to cater to everybody, but if they're still kind of within your target audience. That's very loaded question. How do you start making a game? Yeah, there is. I think he's joking. Yes, there is a diagram how to start making a game. It says here, just do it. Just make it. Pick a game and make it. Make a copy of a simple game. And simple game is not, you know, PUBG or, you know, World of Warcraft. A simple game is Space Invaders or Angry Birds.
Yeah, and
Not
that's
Angry
even
Birds.
not that simple.
What?
I mean, Space Invaders.
No, but
That's
it's
even not that simple.
no. It's simpler than what most people think as simple. Like,
Yeah.
again, one button maybe even game.
I would recommend doing some tutorials, and these tutorials are usually centered around something simple like a roll a ball game or a Flappy Bird clone or something similar to Pac-Man or like a top-down shooter game or something similar to that, where it's usually very, very simple, but it gives you enough tools that over time you can expand on this game if you wanted to, and usually you could finish it in like a week.
Yeah, Angry Birds started as a game dev, but they were experienced devs. It's definitely not a simple game. For
Yeah,
point of
and
view of
also
the
Angry
first game.
Birds is like it's kind of a clone of an existing style of game already.
So is
Like with the
every game.
castles. Yeah, yeah, I know, but I mean, like there was this kind of game on web platforms with the castles where you had to shoot a cannon and
Yeah.
it would break the walls of the castle. I would say that what really made Angry Birds stand out was the branding. Like the same thing with Mario, it had easily recognizable characters that are funny, and that really, really sold the game. Um, the the excellent character designs was what made this game popular.
Well, I would argue that also that the controls were primal, meaning that you just took your finger, put it on top of the bird, you drew like you,
Yeah,
and then you just move it, and then it had a very nice tactile feeling, like and then you're holding it, and then it goes, poof, and then you have a reward, feedback. So going back to last
yeah,
chapter, you're using all these
I
terminology
agree.
we're using. So that was also part of it. Like if you would have made as iconic characters, but the game would have been different, it might not have been so successful.
Yeah, but it was already that, and like the thing with the cannons, that was like, you would drag the mouse backwards and it would shoot the cannonballs forward, or catapults. I think it was catapults, not cannons.
Yeah, but
So it was essentially the same game, different skin.
yeah, of course. But I would say like if you give that game the catapult, my point was that the catapult game, right?
Hmm.
If you give that to a child, like let's say a very young child, say like in like elementary school level, like first or second class, I'm very sure. Well, it depends on what their experience is, but let's say they never used a computer nor a phone
Yeah.
before. For some reason, they wouldn't have used a phone. I would say that they could play probably Angry Birds on the phone instantly, whereas learning how to use the mouse and map that to the screen is still takes a bit of practice first time you do it,
Yeah.
which is all
Yeah,
again
but
a part of it.
like
Like it's not a
the
big
same
selling
style
point,
of
but
game existed
exactly,
on the phone. Like, I mean, before Angry Birds, you still
yeah, yeah,
had that style of game. And they've said it themselves in interviews and post stuff as well. They've said it was because of the branding that's what really skyrocketed this project. That's what kind of made it stand out, because usually the type of people who made these kinds of catapulty type games, they were programmers and they had
yeah,
both.
exactly. They were interested in making the physics like very very accurate, not making the branding and whole thing. What
Yeah.
is the curve of interest in Angry Birds? I think it's quite good. Again, it starts with the whole funny story of the Angry Birds. I think that's the peak, right, for the people who like that type of game. Is the
Mm.
whole joke about the pigs stealing the eggs, and then quite short after, you still continue that peak with the whole first time shooting a bird at a castle and going psh, psh, and then going the pigs going.
Yeah, but I mean the interest curve in a game like be like you start off with the intro, you see the story, it looks interesting, then it kind of mellows out, and then they steal the egg, and that gets
Yeah.
exciting again, and then you start a level, and it's like, this is interesting. You learn how to throw the thing, and it hits the walls, and stuff smashes, and the pigs get wrecked, and it's like, this is cool, this is interesting, and you skip to the next level, rinse and repeat, and you have a fractal interest curve.
Yep. And you also have the what builds up the interest curve is the different birds they introduce over levels.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I don't know if there's like Angry Birds is kind of it's not anymore, or it isn't a good example. The good examples in it has a really good user interface and how they teach players. It's really primal game, again, easy to understand even if other people made it.
It
And
has a good
before that,
theme song.
it has good music. It also super
Yeah.
fast to restart. I think that's one of the. It's not the first game, but it's one of the one that made it. How to say, like, more known that restarting a game really fast, like after you fail, is super important. And also they
Yeah.
they also kind of were one of the first games to really use very simple iconography for like going back to menu, restarting, like just small icons. It's again been done before, but they kind of introduced that whole kind of scene to the mobile in a way. Whereas before it was more programmery, weird blocky things.
Yeah.
They did a lot of things right. Plus, they were just at the right place at the right time. Again, they've released other Angry Bird games now after that who have not done as well because, again, it's not the right time for that type of game anymore on the mobile.
Yeah, and I think also, I mean, they took a lot of chances with a lot of their games. Like the one where you build the flying machine for the pig. That is literally my favorite Angry Bird style game, but it just didn't get the same kind of traction. I think they've made a lot of interesting games.
Yeah, there are many games that are very popular that are made by one game, but it's more likely to win the lottery than to do that. But that doesn't mean you couldn't. It's. I would still say you do more work as one man to get a salary making games alone, versus just getting a regular job, even at a game company. You're gonna be doing the same thing, but doing your game alone is a lot of work. Anyway, should we go forward? I don't know. Was there anything about the interest curve? There was some question in chat about how to evaluate it. I don't know if is that in the lens here. It's kind of in the next lens, so I guess.
I think it's more of like it can't really evaluate. I think it should be. But you should base it by, look at your player, figure out do they seem interested in this thing or not?
Yeah, this is a lot
if
of
they're
intuition.
super excited, then obviously this is an exciting thing for them. And that's why it also says compare it with the lens of the player, because we kind of have similar feelings of what makes us interested. But if Bjorn and I were sitting and looking at something, he might be more interested in something that maybe I was less interested in. Yeah. But, if you have like 55,000 players and you test it on all of those, then you would kind of get a better feel. So I think they should probably also mention that,
well, it kind of goes into this.
Testers might not be enough.
Yeah, and it depends also on the target audience. Like the reason probably we would enjoy different types of games because we're different types of players. Like, for example, if you throw a mobile some kind of free-to-play game, to me, I'll probably not be super interested in it. Whereas if you maybe gave it to Tasty, he might be a bit more interested because I don't play a lot of mobile games. Like, I played a lot, but I don't play it, like, religiously at all. Whereas most people do, though. I play enough to understand them. That's basically what I do. Survival games are not trending, I would say, that much anymore. I would say it's not going out. Survival is a basic primal thing. Again, a Maslow's hierarchy very low. So definitely it's still going to be around. But it's not the hype anymore.
I feel that survival games still have a lot to offer. Like we haven't seen the peak, I think, of survival games just yet.
I agree, but I think also that there's going to be a lull before the peak. I mean, a
lot of people are working on them right now.
Exactly, and the thing is, like, it goes like this. It's like there's the peak. Like, we have the big hype bubble of survival games. There was a lot of survival games released, and now it's going to be like 5 years, maybe even more, depending on if anybody actually makes a good one, until the next kind of peak in them.
Yeah,
because also people are a bit tired, I think, of the survival theme. A bit, like right now, the whole Battlegrounds is the hype factor, right, for this year.
Yeah, but the thing also with these survival games is they all do the same thing pretty much at the moment. And I think in order to get that revitalized a little bit, we need to see some of the more indie products from people who can afford to take chances.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of the games that we've seen in the past 2 years, those are not, in a way, they're not really, because the developers didn't, they made it to make money.
Yeah.
obviously. And when you make a game to make money, it's dangerous to take chances. Whereas a lot of the smaller indies, they take a ton of chances.
Yeah. It depends. I mean, you could argue that PUBG is a survival game too. It's just very short, like
Yeah,
stories. It's
yeah,
a
but
sorry.
I mean, yeah, it's a survival game, but it caters to the it caters more to security and finding items, whereas a lot of the more traditional survival games cater more towards these aspects of survival that we don't see as much in action-based games, like body temperature and weather and
Yeah, of course. Well,
external factors like animals
but that
and
doesn't discount it as a survival game. My point is like
no, I get it.
they basically just distilled 1% of that whole experience to the first 5 minutes of surviving. You don't even
Yeah, they
start in that
basically
game.
just took a shooter game and put that one thing from survival into it, which is
Exactly.
really clever.
Yeah. And that's
But
usually, I think
to
that's
be honest,
a good way to make a game. That instead of trying to make a huge holistic game, especially if you're indie, to take that
yeah,
like small experience and make that like, a drug versus trying to make this whole thing with so many things, which a
mm,
lot of the time then get watered down and you don't have the possibility to balance and build. Again, there's exceptions.
yeah, I think when it comes to PUBG, and I've said this before, I think the main reason why it became popular is because these team-based shooter games are not appealing to a lot of people who don't really see their own flaws. Like they play team-based shooters and they blame everyone else for the mistakes. So for a lot of these people, it's more attractive to play PUBG because if you make a mistake, it's your own fault, or you can blame the terrain, or you can blame that you were unlucky with the randomized drops and stuff. You can't really do that in a quote unquote perfectly balanced team based shooter, because it's like there's always going to be the power up there. There's always going to be this
Yeah.
and that there.
And I think that's the appeal that you're trying to find the dominant strategy. Something you also said you like to do in RPGs and stuff, like
Yeah.
finding how to get that, even if it is random, because there is
Mm,
still ways to get better weapons than other people,
yeah.
because it's not
But
all equal in that game.
but
Um,
that being said, I think it's really good that they are shooter games that cater to single players while
exactly.
still being a PvP game, because there has been too much focus on the team-based stuff, which can be really, really annoying for people who don't want to play in teams. So
Exactly. The usual
plus
thing
one for
people think
PUBG.
when saying survival, saying probably not seeing, is sandbox survival where build bases and plant trees. Yeah, I mean I understand that's also part of survival. The thing is, I don't use the word survival in a way that some kind of like a lot of this is more like when you're a game designer, you talk with these terms in the true meaning of the word, not as a genre, which more is for players, right? Because the whole main goal, is to be the last player alive in PUBG. Whereas in the
Mm,
team-based shooter, it's kill all other people on the other team, which is not. Then the
yeah,
main goal is not to survive, but to kill. So in PUBG, the main goal is to survive. You can even win the game without shooting a single bullet if you're just sneaky enough. So that's why I would say that, again, it's very important to understand that this is the mechanic. And if you can't use the word survive, because it's a loaded word, it's a bit weird. So as a game designer, you have to look through past these things where you have these YouTube commentators raging about like, is this a survival game? That doesn't matter. Um, it's still survival, right? That's the main goal. And that was
I give up. You
Maslow's.
can't read it anyway.
No, you can't. Blurry. It's
Yeah.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And you
Yeah,
would
my
say,
point was that when we're talking about survival games, they're basically games that cater to a lot of the bottom stuff on these pyramid, which is like trying to find a shelter, trying to make sure you have food. But where PUBG really excels is that it also caters to the top,
yeah,
because the top is about self-realization and goals and
yeah,
achieving things, and it's super important for people who play PUBG. They want to be the last man standing, and that is like the top of the pyramid.
yeah,
So if you can make a game that caters to the top of the pyramid and the bottom of the pyramid, then you can really attract some primal interest in the player will want to play this game because they want to fulfill some of these needs.
Yeah, I agree definitely. I also think that in a way the matches are more, in a way, like, yeah, you could, if you play certain games, team-based shooters, they're also short matches that are kind of not that long. But PUBG, basically the matches are always the same length because the time it takes for the thing go down. So that means that there's a lot of people who are above 25, above 30, who don't have that much time, who can still enjoy this game because you don't have to, you don't have to be as invested in a way. Like you could
Yeah.
play it for, you know that the match will take 25 minutes. That's just enough before I have to go and get the kids, thinking. So that it caters to many audiences. It has a lot of small, clever things that they either randomly just chanced upon or then, designed in the game. They want the
Yeah.
chicken dinner. That's true. Yeah, I've seen my friend win a PUBG game without ever shooting a single bullet because the enemy got paranoid and stayed outside the zone for a little too long. Yeah. Or then two people shoot each other at the same time and then you win. Or get really high status. But yeah, those that you were agreeing with this PUBG being survival. But I understand your point is relevant. Like when you talk to an average gamer, if I would say PUBG is a survival game, they would be like, "No, you don't try to eat things there. It doesn't have that. You're off topic. How dare you?" This is interest curse. No, it's true. I actually think PUBG is an interesting thing because it basically built the whole. Again, I'm raging so much about it because it is the smash hit of the year, so it deserves being talked about a bit, even if you don't like it. You don't have to like the
I
game.
don't like it, but I like talking about it.
So actually, I think it has a really good interest curve within the game because I don't know about before you get into the game, but like once you start playing, again, you're jumping, you're falling down to the ground, you're seeing all the places you could go. That's kind of the beginning peak. Then you land, then it starts building up, right? You're collecting things. Now, basically, if you look at the interest curve, right, the model interest curve, you could say that these peaks happen in the PUBG because there's a circle that moves in, but it doesn't always move. And these peaks happen when that circle starts moving. Because before that, you're like, la 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 la, I don't have anything I need to do. But then when it starts moving, you're like, holy crap, I need to move up. Is there a car? Can I get out of here? You're panicking. And that's the interest curve going up. And then it again stops. You have a bit of a breather, like, whew, whew, I made it inside the circle when it stopped moving. Okay, is there any weapons? Are there any people? You can calm down. And then it starts moving again. And then the interest curve goes up, kind of, or the kind of action goes up. And it kind of builds to this crescendo where it's just this small little thing where you can be inside, where you're just panicking if you get that far. So it builds basically perfectly on the model of interest curves, which is, again, these things are not like per chance. They might have designed it per chance, probably not. They thought about this, but it also feeds in. Why it is good is not by luck, in a way. You can see it, from this, and maybe even the fractal, you could argue, is relevant because each game you get better. So maybe your interest curve goes up, and the lull is just when you're waiting for a new match to begin. You could argue that too. So anyway, let's not talk more. Let's go back to. We still have some things to cover before we.
Yeah, we need 3 more.
Yeah.
Before we're done.
Should we take the next one? The lens of inherent interest.
Yep.
So that's lens number 70, the lens of inherent interest. It has a quote: "Drama is anticipation mingled with uncertainty." William Archer. Some things are just interesting. Use this lens to be sure your game has inherently interesting qualities by asking these questions. What aspects of my game will capture the interest of my player immediately? Does my game let the player see or do something they have never seen or done before? What base instincts does my game appeal to? Can it appeal to more of them? With higher instincts, what higher instincts does my game appeal to? Can it appeal to more of those? Does my dramatic change and anticipation of dramatic change happen in my game? How can it be more dramatic? You had this lens, right? True.
Yep. Number 62 in my book.
So again, this is the idea that this lens tries to help you with that touchy-feely, is it interesting or not? I like his millifunds. I think that should be definitely a meter. He says here that we can read the beginning here. So it says, at this point, you might find your analytical left brain crying out, "I like these charts and graphs. They're very tasty. But how can I objectively evaluate how interesting something is to another person? This all seems very touchy-feely." And it's very touchy-feely. Many people ask what the units of interest are, and there is no good answer for that. We do not have a funometer that can give reading in millifunds. But that's okay, because all we care about are relative changes in interest. Absolute interest is less important. So it's, again, we can't measure necessarily how much interest, but we can measure, again, oh, it changed, it didn't change. So seeing something fluctuate and then seeing it fluctuate more or less. I still like millifunds. I want to start measuring
I want
things
a
in
phenometer.
millifunds.
I wish I had a phenometer.
Phenometer that measures millifunds. Guys in chat, how many millifunds is the stream right now?
Yes.
-5?
On a scale of 1 to 100. There is no -5.
There is. It's when it sucks the bone marrow.
That's just milli-sad.
Milli-sads.
Milli-sadness. What's the opposite of fun? Serious?
Milli-serious.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. It could be many things. Milli-other emotion.
Yeah. Milli-unfun.
What's up, Lilybite? Okay, they're talking about something else. Okay, so plenty use Game Maker. No, a lot of people use Game Maker. Undertale, Hotline Miami. It's usually smaller teams, 2D games.
Nuclear Throne.
Nuclear Throne, yeah. Hyper Light Drifter. Yeah. Use whatever works. It's the end product that matters, not the engine. If your game is great, it doesn't matter if you made it out of butter and cheese.
There's a lot of people who are like, I don't want to play this game because that's really, what the game was made in should not have an impact. If a game is good, a game is good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I played several really great games with that were made with RPG Maker even, yeah. No, it's that if it looks like an old game, it's because you intended it to look like an old game, and that's what you wanted. Yeah. You can do high-res graphics in that too. It might not be intended for that. No, you, Mr. Creation, are on off topic, not us. But let's go back to the thing. Like, is there anything you want to add to that? It kind of is hard to again discuss because it's kind of like he says, it's a bit about the curiosity, like the lens of curiosity and stuff like that. Like, I think the most important thing is to understand that it's a thing you see change, like something is changing relative how it was before, and that's how you can see that. Oh, he seems more, active now. Like that's the other thing that's very hard is like I say, when you test with players, it's super important to look at their faces and look very, very closely. Someone could look like they want to murder you but have a lot of fun because they're just so focused. Remember that
I always have fun murdering people.
Yeah, me too. I don't understand what the problem is. That is the face they make when they play your game. And now you have to ask yourself, is he actually having fun? Or is he just being creepy?
Blinking is for losers. Or people with really dry eyes.
So the whole idea of like really looking and trying to read those micro expressions and things like that. Because again, actually good advice for doing testing, if you're doing it with the person, where you can actually interact with him, not it, is that you actually have one person to look at what's happening on the screen and another person who just looks at the face. And you can even record the face if you have the permission. So not, again, it doesn't matter what the player is even saying. It's more about looking at the expressions and emotions and the gestures. Then some people even say like, "Oh, I'm having so much fun! Yay, yay! I'm so happy right now. Yeah, I'm really excited about your game, man. Oh yeah.
Good game. When
Oh my
does it
God,
end?
I'm having so. I don't can't stop, man. You know, hey baby, let me record your face. They do that. If you've ever been to a test, they will ask for permission to record your face. Anyway,
Speaking of face, we have reached the lens of beauty.
here we don't need to let's just look at Tasty, and he will explain the lens of beauty just using his face.
Yes. Catastrophe. In my book, it's lens number 63, the lens of beauty.
It cut out, and I heard it's the lens 1, 2, 3.
Ah, damn it. Are we done cutting out? Stupid
No.
stream. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's just occasional. It's like once every 10 minutes or something.
This is Radio London. This is Radio London. Can you hear me?
It was all right. How much would you pay for it? I don't know. Maybe $5. I'm gonna go home now and cook dinner because it's more fun than to talk about your game. Bye bye. Anyway.
Lilybite says, no, I can't hear you clearly. Damn it.
So this is Lens 71 in the second edition. If you have that book, you could read this one. You have a more musky voice for this time of day.
Musky? Okay. Am I going through clear? Yes or no?
Yeah, for now.
Good. For now. Okay. Lens number 60. Lens of...
Oh, now you're cutting out.
Yeah, that sucks. It's probably... I think it happens after a while. I think it's a Discord thing.
Yeah.
Discord was not designed for 2.5 hour plus things.
Maybe we should try Skype next time. Let's try Skype next time.
Okay.
Should I read it just because...
Yep.
Yeah, okay. You're gonna hear it now in the squirrel voice. Squirrel voice. I can't even pronounce anything anymore. It's the time of day.
Squirrel.
Squirrel. Beauty is mysterious. Why, for example, do the most beautiful things have a touch of sadness about them? Use this lens to contemplate the mysteries of beauty in your game by asking yourself these questions. Are you beautiful? Do you have a full set of... No, I was kidding.
Your lens is not the same as mine.
Okay, the real questions. I was just checking if you're awake. What elements make up my game? How can each one be more beautiful? Some things are not beautiful in themselves, but are beautiful in combination. Sorry. How can the elements of my game be composed in a way that is poetic and beautiful? What does beauty mean within the context of my game?
And again, it's just a wishy-washy lens, really.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is not something people struggle with, you know? It's like, you know, they usually almost overdo the beauty sometimes. It's like, hey, your art and your game looks like, you know, crazy beautiful, but the gameplay is like I want to hit myself. I would rather hit my head against the wall than play your game. It's very beautiful, but that's usually the problem. Or the only reason usually the lens of if something's not beautiful enough is just because you don't have an artist. So you don't have someone putting all their time working on it.
So it's very much a visual thing.
Yeah, it's a visual thing. But it's, of course, maybe the relevance to this is that you can use beauty as a tool for the interest curve. And that's where it's interesting that, you know, you could reveal a beautiful landscape, you know, ooh, and then that people go like, oh, you know. So it doesn't always need to be a game mechanic or something like that. It could also be like a cutscene. It could be a big reveal. It could be a story reveal. It could be a lot of things. So, again,
that makes sense.
Yeah. Should we go to the next, the lens of projection? I don't know if there's anything else. Have you seen My Crazy Beautiful Chickens? No, I haven't. I can't open it because it'll open it above Tasty's face.
It's a 3D model of a chicken that cries, and then it says "Don't judge"
Don't
on his
judge.
back. Yeah.
Does he have a motorcycle jacket on?
I closed it down, but I don't recall it having. It was a. He says it's a chicken, but it was white.
Okay.
It did have like those things here, I think, or maybe it was here.
Can
the red
chickens be
things.
white? I mean, there's
They
white
can.
chickens.
They can. I'm just not used to seeing them white. Here, mostly all chickens are red.
Red? Oh. We
Yeah,
have
it's
brown
sort of
chickens
like-
and white chickens.
Yeah, brown, red, brown, brown.
Burgundy.
Brown.
Okay.
Devious Oatmeal says, "I always warn for my opinion. Do you want me to say what you want to hear, or do you?" Yeah, sounds a lot like something I would say.
Yeah. The thing is, in the end, I mean, you should always, I think, try to be as honest as possible, but have tact. So,
Yeah.
trying to somehow tactfully reveal that, hey, maybe you should think about this. Also, what I tend to do is like, I won't nitpick on everything. I will take the biggest things I've found and I'll like say, fix these 3 big things, come back to me, and then I'll start taking apart the smaller pieces that I feel like are wrong or I didn't like. Instead of trying to like wine and dine with like a 600 course dinner for them, because then they're gonna tune out.
Yeah.
And
I try to just pick like one bad thing and try to bring one good thing up for each bad thing. And if there aren't enough good things to bring out, then that's kind of where I stop. You know, it's like I really like this thing here. I didn't like that thing. I really like this thing here, and then that thing I didn't like because of so and so.
yeah.
That tends to work for me. But then again, you know, sometimes I'm also like when kids show up to me and they're like, "Here, you can have this drawing." You know, on the inside, I'm thinking, "Are you giving me this drawing because I was closer to you than the trash can?" But I don't say it to them all the time.
Only every other word.
Nah, I mean sometimes I will. Like if the kid is like sitting right next to me and they're like,
Drooling
"Here,
all
you
over
can
the
have this drawing," and they're already halfway across the room. I'm like, "Hey, wait, are you giving me this drawing because you didn't want to throw it out?"
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, Chad is discussing a lot about this subject, and you should always be honest, but you can also be honest and you can be kind, meaning that there's different ways to say things. Also, just saying, "This sucks," is not being honest. That's just you saying it sucks, which doesn't help the person at all. So, of course, he's going to be frustrated. So if I just say something like, "This is bad, I hate it," well, what's the point? You know, what you need to do is, again, constructive. The thing is, like, being constructive is hard if you don't know how to put your emotions and feelings into words, and in addition, know what's causing it. Because, again, you might have to be a game designer to be able to then, you know, actually decipher, okay, I'm feeling that this is boring because of these things, or because it's lacking these things, or you know. So it's like, again, most people like a food critic can eat a food and be like, there's missing a hint of acidity, I would have used a lemon and put it here.
Lemon.
Yes, it's and here we can clearly taste the small droplets of animal juice you spread out, and you're like, most people are just like, I didn't like it, or like,
Animal juice.
exactly.
Animal.
Yeah, constructive criticism. But the thing is, why is it so hard to give constructive criticism? Is because you don't know how to construct the game. If you don't know how to construct the game, you can't be constructive. Now everybody's like, no. But you can always be polite, again. You know, there's different ways of saying things instead of I've been blunt sometimes and not being polite, and but usually if that helps the person in the all, like, don't care if they then hate me if it actually helps them then.
I
But
think it's
I haven't
also
been
a case
rude.
of time. I mean, sometimes it's like, do I really want to spend 5 minutes providing feedback
Mm.
if they're, if you know that they're not going to use it or be serious about it, then don't waste your time. You don't have to be honest, and you also don't have to spend time on it. Just, be like, yeah, I tried it. It was pretty okay. Good game. Good game. Good luck with your game.
Yeah. When you see
So, what are you
actually,
making after this game? Just curious.
and that's the thing, like once you're actually interested in what people have to say, not just want good feedback, which is what most people, everybody loves being, oh my god, I love it, and all that kind of stuff. And because it's rewarding when people give you compliments. But once you're really doing this as a job, when someone says, like, oh, when's your next game coming? Or, you know, stuff like what just Tasty said, then you know that, okay, my game needs tremendous amount of work. He probably didn't like it at all. Maybe also something is like, what usually helps us is discuss, and which people will love to discuss for an hour, is the type of game they do like. And it's something that they also should remember to cover, because sometimes if I give a game to somebody and they're like that, like, oh yeah, great job, dude, tell me when I'll go home now, whatever, or what's your next game, is this finished? Or
Yeah.
something like that. You know
Are you
that.
working on any other game?
Exactly. It might be also because they're not in the target audience. They just don't like that type of game. Like if there's certain games, if you put it in front of me, I would just look at it from an analytical point of view, because I don't really personally enjoy those type of games, and then it's hard, of course, for me to evaluate that, because again, we're individuals.
The thing is,
Yeah.
it's not always about the black and white and fail or succeed. Um, Sometimes it's just about learning from mistakes. And if you're not making any mistakes along your development project, then I don't think you've shown it to enough people. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, and it's
everyone makes mistakes and learns from them.
exactly. It's the
Fully.
most important is just keep doing. In the end, if you just keep doing things, and probably even using statistics, at some point you must do something correctly. But not even looking outside of that, that is like, well, every time you fail, if you reflect on why it failed, you will always learn something.
Yeah.
But if you don't reflect, then yeah, it's just probability. If you just do this 1 million times, maybe one of them will succeed. But if you then, in addition, also reflect and try to learn for every step you do, like, oh, this worked, this doesn't. So remember, guys, it's as important to know what doesn't work as what does work. And always be ready to reevaluate things too. Sometimes I also get people saying to me, like, we tried that already. It didn't work. But then it's like, well, that was like 50 years ago and you used blocks of stone. Now we have like neon lights and, hover cars. Maybe things have changed. Everything I do is a mistake. However, I'll end up correcting them. Yeah. And then actually, that is the thing. A lot of game design, it's an experience, it's an art form. And a lot of the time, it is like, I made it like this, and then I correct it, and then it's correct, and then you can move on. But not always. There's hopeless projects too. I've had plenty of them. No, Croatian, it doesn't suck. But you might not like it. You're probably the type of player who doesn't enjoy that type of games. Doesn't mean that, again, remember, there's different types of people who enjoy different types of art, graphics, and sounds. And the sounds don't suck because it can play any sound that you want. So you are the architect of your own game. If you
I showed
make,
my
yep.
I showed my Thrust game to or an ex-colleague, and her reaction was, when she saw it, she was like, do people play these kinds of games? And I was like, oh man, because she is a real console pleb. Like she plays only PlayStation 4 games, and she
Yep.
considers herself like a hardcore gamer. And I'm like, I don't even want to discuss it with her. It's just like, okay, I can't show you this game another time. It's like she literally, like, if it has graphics or if it looks simple, she cannot play it. She needs games to look like AAA. But then she doesn't really care about the mechanics. It's just like, she'll happily gobble up whatever half-assed story that some AAA company made a game, and it's like, she finishes a game in 8 hours. She's like, yeah, I just dished out $60 for a crappy game, and she doesn't have a lot of money. So for her, it's like she can buy one game every 4 months, which lasts her 8 hours. I mean, it makes no sense, but she still thinks it's the best. So fair enough.
As long as
I'm not
you
even
know
gonna
that's the,
argue. I'm just gonna cry in a corner.
yeah. I mean, again, we are creators of experiences, which this book really tries to put through our skull when reading this. And some people like different experiences. Like there's people who, like again, it's like as long as they have fun. That doesn't mean that I have to make games for them necessarily, nor do I have to show them my game. That's very important. I've done mistakes where I've shown my game to people who are not in the target audience, and then what happens is like I'll get the wrong feedback, and then I'll be like, okay, I'll take this game and make it a strategy gaming instead of being something else I intended.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
and then I'm like, okay, what now? I didn't really want to make a strategy game, but some person said that I should go that direction because he
Thank
loves
you for the
strategy gaming.
feedback on my first-person shooter. I will.
You cut out. No, I don't know what it
Oh.
ended. We just
Oh,
know
I
that
just said, thank you for the feedback on my first-person shooter. I will now go home and turn it to The Sims.
the sim. Ooh, first. I actually that
First-person Sims.
crap. It's gonna become a 4-hour stream just because we rant now, but
No, we just have one lens left.
exactly.
We're
We're just
done.
leaving it. So there's a streamer slash YouTuber called Robaz, which I many times talk about on the stream because I really like his stuff, and he plays The Sims as a first-person shooter.
Oh, how does that even work?
In Sims 3, you can have guns and you can look through the scope and shoot people, and death comes and takes them away. I don't know what expansion pack that is, or is it a mod? But
Oh,
and he keeps murdering people, and it's weird.
first-person Sims.
He's a Swede.
FPS.
He has an interesting English accent, a Swedish English accent, and then he has a very weird
Swedish.
humor.
Yeah.
No, it's not
Robust.
third person. It's actually first person. You look through the lens and you shoot. He shoots people. You don't see it from up top. Anyway, so the next lens. Maybe I should read it just because then it won't cut out. Because one key indicator that lens 72, the lens of projection. One key indicator that someone is enjoying an experience is that they have projected their imaginations into it. When they do this, their enjoyment of the experience increases significantly in a sort of virtuous circle. To examine whether your game is well suited to induce projection from your players, ask yourself these questions. So these are now the lenses, kind of. What is there in my game that players can relate to? What else can I add? What is there in my game that will capture a player's imagination? What else can I add? Are there places in the game that players have always wanted to visit? Does the player get to be a character they could imagine themselves to be? Are there other characters in the game that the players would be interesting to meet or to spy on? Do the players get to do things that they would like to do in real life but can't? Is there an activity in the game that once a player starts doing, it is hard to stop? Actually, for that last one, so that was the lens. For the last one, are there activity in the game that once the player starts doing, it's hard to stop? The lens of the toys. If you make a toy, it definitely feeds into it's hard to stop when just the interaction is fun. Like it's hard to stop spinning, or playing around with a pencil because it's kind of a toy. When if you just play around with it in your hand and you see people nervously play around. It's the same thing in games when you have a really good toy-like behavior. That's one way to do that, for example. Do we imagine that retro games would come back? I wonder why it came back. Well, in the amount of players that are used to be pixel art versus new generation playing versus polished games. Yeah, the thing is, there's a thing called aesthetics. So there's people who just like, if you just think of graphics or art from the point of view of resolution and how close it's to real world. It's like, for example, if you paint a painting and you try to be as close to real world, you might as well be just a photographer. And the same thing, sometimes using a different aesthetics, which is the proper word, or a style, might invoke other emotions in people. So, for example, doing a lower res picture might give more space for imagination. So instead of, for example, if I was here and it was a pixel version of me, you could imagine what I look like a bit. Maybe I would still have the gray strike in my hair, but you wouldn't be stuck with the reality of my ugly mug right here. So that's the whole idea. So again, bad graphics would be when you have bad aesthetics, which means that you're inconsistent. Let's say I put a 3D model in game, and then I have a 2D model, like 2D sprite thing, and then I have like when you see those asset bashes, right? When they just buy stuff and put them together randomly, and then it's like everything looks like from a different thing. It's a bit like one is an anime character, and then the other one is like Donald Duck Disney style, and another one is like the third one is like a picture of a real person, and it just looks all over the place. And of course, it's a cost thing too. There's no thing as bad graphics, is what I argue. Like I said, bad graphics. It's a very bad graphics is again when you're missing the vocabulary to explain something. Kingdom Hearts.
I guess bad graphics is when you're not using the graphics for what they could be used for, like showing information, doing things, it's like when you're being inconsistent, or it is bad graphics if you're trying to do something that you cannot. Like you see a lot of games where they try to do 3D models of human beings, and whoever made them just does not have the skill to animate them realistically, or to create eyes that look like eyes rather than bottomless pits of hell.
Yeah, but that's an inconsistency again, because again,
yeah,
you modeled maybe it super accurately, but then you animated it like it's a Barbie doll. It's like if I would act like this all the time or something, or if your facial track, you go very close to the face. It's still bad graphics. If I tell someone you have bad graphics, they're not gonna understand how to fix it. But if you say like there's an inconsistency between that you have super realistic facial model that's high polygon, but then it moves like it would be an 8-bit thing. Except if that's the style, it could be interesting if it's a robot. Maybe then it's can move like this, but or bottomless pits of hell. Again, that's the thing you see. Actually, that is bad graphics. That most all good graphics game has that. Like I've rarely seen. There's some games that do it quite well, but I rarely seen where they don't have the bottomless pit of hell, or the stare of death. Yeah. I love you. I am here to talk to you. And it's like super realistic model, but the whole facial expression is all over the place.
Yeah.
Doing the robot, yeah. And the thing is, different. Just because somebody doesn't like everything doesn't make pixel art, for example, bad graphics. It's just less graphics. As long as you're consistent, there's still a lot of people that love to play that games. That said, pixel graphics is going. How to say? Like pixel graphics is maybe not as popular right now anymore. Minecraft is another example. Again, it's consistent with its graphics. It doesn't look the most interesting visually though, but it has great gameplay, and that is anyway the most important thing. What kind of book club is this? I'm sorry. It's the robot book club.
It's the Relive the 80s book club for adults who make games.
Exactly. So
So we're done. Hi.
Yeah, we're done. But basically, the lens of projection is kind of like the closer it is to yourself, the more important it is to you, is one aspect of it. So, for example, if you feel like something happened to yourself, it's more important for you. Well, if it happens to your friends, it's also important, but less important than it's happened to you. And then if it happens to strangers, again, it might still be important, but even less important than if it happens to your friends. So thinking about that in the way that you can use that also as a thing to peak interest curves and work around that is how to say. There's different ways you can think it again. Where do you apply it? Like a lot of time when you play a game, you even see the main character as yourself. So if you do something bad to the main character, you're most probably gonna affect more than if you or if you're a multiplayer game and something happens to your team, you care more. Then if it happens to the other team, you care less, even if it's like a bug. Again, we're not discussing here to design bugs in there.
I think this thing with the projection, it's really a case of trying to look at your game and figure out, are there put themselves into the game, so to speak. How can they have empathy with characters? Like you've seen it in games where you have critters like little kittens or sheeps or cats or penguins or whatever in WoW. You'd always see some people who would run over, destroy all the little critters, and then you have other people, like Lady Graf. She never kills the kittens, and she hates levels with spiders, and I'm kind of the opposite, where I don't care what kind of mob I'm killing. It's just XP, and if there's a kitten on the way, I'll stomp on it, because it's just pixels. So, again, it's one of these things.
Lucky
where
the kitties are not in your room right now.
Well, they aren't pixels. They're real. It's just that when it's in a game, I don't really care.
But what if this is the Matrix?
Then I'm screwed. And I'm probably going to the Matrix hell. If that exists.
No, it's kidding. Go on. You were explaining something.
Yeah, I'm just saying, that there are these things that it works for some people, but not for everyone. And again, that has to do with, having to look at your players, because
Yep.
you can direct some players to do a specific thing based on what they're seeing, because they are projecting themselves and feeling stuff in the game, whereas, there are other people who don't really care about it.
Yep, true. But I would also say that probably you can still use this, for example, for players like you. But it's not in the aspect of fluffiness or cute kitties, but it's probably in like, for example, not, again, like...
Shooting.
Yeah, like what can you, again, the game mechanics itself, how do they affect you, how do they affect the players, and how do they affect your progress, right? So
yeah.
When you design maybe a game mechanic, you can think like, I want this game mechanic to be more important for you, so it'll have more direct impact on yourself. So let's say like, oh, you're invulnerable now, it's the Hearthstone or whatever, for a bubble, the Paladin bubble or something. Or let's say that it's less powerful, then maybe it doesn't have as much interest, but it might still be useful. So it might be it's a bit hard again to explain it, but there might be still ways to use this, even if it's not only about relatable characters necessarily.
No, it's also about actions, like when it says, do the players get to do things they would like to do in real life but can't? Shooter games, that's a pretty good way to pull players in, because some people might like to shoot weapons, but not necessarily in real life.
Yeah. And then, of course, you don't have to have all these factors. So he basically breaks it down to 3 categories, which is inherent interest, poetry, and projection. And you could, he then gives different examples. So you can see here the graphs. So you read different games as examples, and they're strong on different places for the interest curve. So for example, The first one is let me see here. I don't find the name of the game. Oh, the first one is not a game. It's a violin concerto. No, wait, no, it's not. It's juggling chainsaws. He claims that it's inherently interesting because people are just curious. Oh, chainsaw? That sounds dangerous. It's basically their primal reaction, and that's why it's inherent interest. Like, oh, it's just interesting to see if he will cut his hand off. It doesn't really have any poetry, which is the second one, so it's not very poetic or
there's no
beautiful.
Story or anything, no
Exactly.
beauty.
And you don't really project. Well, you might project a bit, like, oh, how would it feel
if he
to
drops
get
it, then yeah.
You would have maybe some empathy, like, it would feel really bad in your hand if a chainsaw cut it off. Then the next is a violin concerto, which would have not so much inherent interest if you don't understand about music much, or you would have to understand, rubbing. He says rubbing two sticks together is not inherently very interesting, but then the poetry that it creates with the beautiful sounds is interesting. So that's high on poetry. Again, projection, you don't really project yourself that much, maybe a bit if the music brings you to a beautiful landscape and you imagine yourself running in the fields or something. But otherwise, it's more about the beautiful music and how it makes you feel through that. And then the last one is Tetris. It's not very inherent interest, not very was it Tetris the last one?
Yeah, the last one is Tetris. It has a lot of projection because when you're playing it, you are in the Tetris trance. You're just, you're in the game indirectly.
EA.
It's in the game. It's in the game.
Yeah.
It's loot boxes. We put it in the game.
I even find myself sometimes when I play Tetris, when you rotate the block, that I like turn my head a bit. It's like,
I don't. I just sit there stone cold face and wreck the game.
But yeah, that's these chapters. And then, the last thing he says that you can put all these together. So thinking about the interest curve, and at different phases you can do either poetic interest or projected interest or inherent interest. And then you can have it, like different parts of the game, different things make it interesting. I personally say this projection, poetry, and inherent interest as a vocabulary and the thinking process doesn't really, it's not very clear to me. Like, I understand it, but it would be easier to maybe put it into other terminology. It would be easier to understand.
Yeah.
Like, it's a bit hard to think about projection and poetry and inherent interest when I think about my game. Like, is this poetry, or is it poetic, or is it just inherent?
Well, I mean, it's in a way, it's your game is poetic with the colors and the sense of floating down and stuff. And when the enemies are chasing you, there is a degree of projection because you don't want to get caught. You are the witch in your game.
But would I use those as the method to build those, or would that just be a way to analyze it afterwards? Like, let's say,
I think it's a way to analyze it, and then if you feel like, if you're scoring low on all three, then you need to do something different in your game to kind of rank
maybe
them
that
higher.
way.
And
yeah, it's like a late game. Once you made your game and you have it testable. Well, again, the interest curve you can only really gauge when you first times test it, and then you can think about like, I have a dip here, maybe I can put a bit of poetry here by putting a beautiful cutscene of a tree or something. I don't know.
Yep.
It would be interesting if you just put random stuff that doesn't actually connect to the game at all. You're just like, look at this beautiful tree. It's like, we're in a castle falling. Why is it showing a tree suddenly?
Well, imagine if you did that, and for every level that you beat, you get an extra part of the story that's totally unrelated to the game. But if the story is that good, people will want to watch through it until someone makes an edited video and puts it on YouTube with just the cutscenes and not your crappy game or my crappy game.
Yeah. There's also interesting things. It kind of plays towards certain player base and maybe to the fractal whatever thing for interest curves, which is that Red Links, who makes Trials HD, They have what they made in their game was like it's almost like a meta game. So they built in secrets in the game, and only hardcore players find them. And then they start wondering, why is there a thing like that in the game? And then actually, those secrets were like secret messages, and it builds upon each other, where it revealed a real world location. And then if you went there, they would give you a box, and then you got a secret thing. So it was like this whole player base trying to kind of decrypt this secret message they put in the game. And that was really probably very interesting for the hardcore gamers who noticed this, and then the people who like to solve these type of puzzles.
Yeah, I
and
think
that
so
also
too.
that also created a lot of virality for the game later on. So
Yeah,
they had
because
weird things.
people want to share the knowledge that they discovered. A lot of times they want to do that.
Yeah. Oh, Nokinsu, welcome to the Company Game Devs, and cheers for the follow. Yeah, I would agree. The Art of War is first for business, and then the Art of Game Design. It's actually not necessarily bad advice. It's actually, if you're saying it sarcastically.
I would say the art of war is more applicable to the rest of life than the art of game design. So
Exactly.
it's a good order of reading things, you know. Pick the book that helps you the most first. That would only be natural.
Yeah. I would say also Art of War is maybe, it's a really good book, but you need a bit of life experience to apply it to, though. It's very abstract otherwise. When your enemy comes at you, hide behind the rock. Okay, it doesn't say it like that, but
I do that all the time.
yeah. And then it's like, well, I don't know does he mean, and then you know how you have to it's still like you have to think them abstractly to kind of apply it to other things. Sup, Tim?
Yeah.
How are you, dude? And turtles. Are you turtle tasty?
I think it's just everyone else that are turtles, but maybe I'm a turtle too because I sit like this.
Actually, talking about Intriskers, in the Mario World, is it Mario World? Anyway, when Yoshi was first introduced, I would say that was a nice peak in the beginning of the game. If you played the classic Mario and then you played that, you will be like, ooh, you can ride a dino now?
Yeah, I remember that. It was in Super Mario World for the SNES.
Yeah, Super Mario
Yeah.
World, sorry. Yeah.
Mind blown.
Mind blown. And that's, I think, the whole beginning interest, and then it just goes to basic stuff, and then it builds up.
Hi,
on
Mark. Sorry,
Hi,
that
Mark.
was The Room reference, which Mark has probably seen a million times.
Yeah, it's his life story.
Yeah, everyone says that when they see him. Oh, hi, Mark.
So, for next time, should we look at how thick the next chapters are? How many lenses there are?
I don't know. I just looked at two of them and I figured, hey, my chapter about 40 pages or so, which is fine by me.
Oh, 17, 18, 19. Oh.
For me, it's chapter 15 and
That's about
chapter
40, yeah.
16.
So there's 82. It stops at, so how many lenses is that? So it's 10 lenses. That seems doable. What is the
Yeah, we should
topics?
be able to do that in 7 hours.
So next week we would cover the chapters that is named "One Kind of Experience is the Story." So we will talk about story.
Yeah.
And then the next
In
chapter,
mine, there are actually only 8 lenses.
you've lost 2. And then
Yeah.
the following chapter, after 17, is that story and game structures can be artfully merged with indirect control. Quick time events. So that's the topic. We're gonna discuss a lot of story in the next. So if you like stories, or you like to make story-based games, join us not tomorrow, but Sunday in a week. So we'll be back on Sunday as normal.
Yep. We will.
We will. Will there be an art part of the stream? Yeah, yep. I was thinking of doing some art. We're gonna do some concepting though more. But more of that after the pause. I don't want to
Yeah.
keep.
First, we got to get rid of me.
Yeah, get rid of Tasty because he's much better artist. So I don't want him here around when I'm drawing.
Actually, you're a lot better than me now. Painting and stuff. I draw
because-
like simple things.
No, you have a different style. I couldn't do your
Yeah.
style. It would look like, you know, a wiggly wiggle or something. Why Saturday this week? Because I'm busy tomorrow. The other way would have been to skip the whole stream, but I didn't want to do that.
I'm glad we didn't skip it. I had a good stream. You have been an awesome audience.
Exactly. And you have been an awesome Tasty.
You have been an awesome Bjorn.
That I don't know about. I have heard,
Well, I
heard
do.
that there's some quite awesome Bjorns like Bjorn Borg out
Do
there.
not question my authority.
Authorita! Can we see what game you did? We didn't make a game today, or what do you mean? Who is he talking to?
I think he's talking to you.
For the lecture today, let's go with an art. Yeah, let's make an art. So we'll be back in 5 minutes. Don't go anywhere if you're interested in art. Remember, tomorrow at 7, I'm gonna start a game design book club marathon. Meaning, I will stream all episodes. I tried to edit this one even, so we will have this one in it. So you will see like 100 hours of us going off topic and maybe 5 hours of actual discussion around the book. Am I seeing a Steam controller in the background? Yep, we looked at it today, and it's not as dusty as it was before. It's
The dust is now in your lungs.
exactly. This controller much better than this because of the tactileness of the thumbsticks. I don't know. I don't like how this feels. I thought I would, but I didn't. So it's been here on the sofa for a year now. Yeah, Divas Open,
Alrighty.
go rest. If you guys, it's already quite late, depending on where you live, so. But we'll be back in 5 minutes. Thank you, Tasty. Remember,
Thank
guys.
you for having me.
Remember, guys, go follow Tasty if you haven't. He also streams on occasion. Are we gonna see more Tasty streams in the future?
We will. You will see more tasty streams in the future. We're working on changing the office a bit so that we can put up a green screen or put up something so that I'm not occupying the whole office while streaming, and Lady Graf can be in the back, but she doesn't really want to be in the back when I'm streaming, which is fair. You know, she requires a bit more preparation time. So we're working on fixing the office, and then maybe I can do some streaming, more streaming.
I have a very important question, a follow-up. Once you set up the green screen, what side will the night elf be on?
I think we're getting rid of the night elf. I think it's annoying. It's blocking my shelf and all, but I don't know. We'll figure it out.
I think that's your opinion. You're going to be in trouble tonight, sir.
Yeah.
That's-
She'll be all like, "That's my night elf. I can decide where I want it to be."
put it in the bedroom. No, I mean nothing. Yes.
No,
Oh.
not in the bedroom.
No, elf.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most people are just here to look at the night elf, so.
I can tell by the chat. It's like Spectrum is going, "Blasphemy, Tasty Graf. This is blasphemy."
No. We should just have a stream with the night elf, where we just put the camera on the night elf, and then you just hear our voices, but it's just a picture of the night elf.
That would be really weird. Imagine my voice for that night elf. I'll be like, "Hello."
I love this idea. You should do that. You should just do a stream where you have the night elf as a streamer.
Yeah. I actually have the Cam Rig program where you can replace your face with a 3D model that talks.
No, that's not fun. It needs to be the night elf.
It needs to be a
This
mannequin.
went south. It always.
Yeah,
goes
it
south.
did. Everyone wants me to place the night elf at bed. It's like, no, I don't want her looking at me while I'm sleeping. It's bad enough that she's looking at us while we stream.
I was once. It was a hotel that was both a hotel and a museum, and the museum would have like dolls, like they're just like. And then
Ugh.
I actually had a room where it went straight into the museum. So I would go like when I would walk, come to the hotel during the evening when it's dark. I would just be like, "Holy!" There's like somebody standing there. Like it's creepy.
Yeah.
I don't like dolls. That's why I don't have any. Well, I have the plushies or whatever, but I don't have dolls. They're creepy.
Yeah.
Chucky's
That
gonna
is
come and get
creepy.
us.
Yeah.
I don't know how you live with a night elf in your house. It's just like
I locked the door.
so she can't get to you during the night.
I think she's watching the stream.
Oh no. Crap.
I just heard her like I closed 2 doors to the living room and I love my night elf.
No, she just does that always. Like every
No,
every 5,
she
15
doesn't
minutes.
usually yell that.
No, she does. You're just in denial.
Maybe she's watching the stream.
Hi.
I don't know. She could be. Uh-oh.
Artificially increasing our viewer numbers. Tasty.
Yeah. Or maybe I just have one of those voices that kind of vibrate through walls and concrete and stuff.
My dad has that voice. It goes to anything. It's like
Yeah.
if he would be a superhero, it would be his voice. It just goes like Superman lands. It's like, I'm indestructible. And then he says hi. And it just goes through and punches through his eye socket. And then Superman like... Oh, he has a scary
That's a crazy
voice.
voice.
I mean, it is very... It's... The only thing that's worse is if my dad talks when he's drunk. It's like, I need a hearing aid.
Because he talks that loud?
Yeah. But he has
man.
he lost part of his hearing in the army when he was young, so they shot without hearing protection.
Yeah.
That's the thing that kind of annoys me when you. Well, I'm going into a rant, but like the whole movies and games, like you're shooting with like rocket launchers without hearing like protection. Yeah, I'm like, you okay? That guy can't hear anything anymore ever.
Yep.
Good luck with
Yeah.
life, except if they have small like plugs. They could that can help, but. Or in movies where they just pick up a gun and shoot, and they're not like, my ears,
Yep.
Well, it's not that loud, but...
Yeah, the pistol is not that bad, but, you know, like some of the older rifles, like in the Danish military when I served, we were using a rifle that has a relatively large caliber.
Yeah.
And that was very, very loud, I remember. And I remember being on an exercise with, or a drill with another section of soldiers that were using a more modern M rifle, and that rifle was not as powerful and it wasn't as loud either. So whenever we shot our rifles, they would throw themselves to the ground and scream artillery because they thought that we were like there were bombs coming in. They would be like, artillery!
Yeah.
Dude, it's just my rifle. Sorry. Yeah. But they were loud. I don't think they're that bad anymore. I don't know.
No, but you would still lose even from even a pistol if you use it all the time without hearing protection, especially inside. You would.
Oh, yeah.
Like your hearing wouldn't go deaf or anything, but like you would.
Yeah, and especially if you look at some more modern or like some of the 2000-ish first-person shooters, when they didn't really have the budget to put stuff in the rooms, they would just be like boxy rooms. If you shot a gun in there, like if you would lose your hearing because of the echo.
Yeah. But anyway, that is the thing that the art of the game design didn't cover, but now you know as game designers.
Yeah, we always finish off with important information about echoes and farts.
So now, exactly, especially farts, not so much echoes, except the echoes of the farts. That's more interesting.
Yep.
Now you know. So just in 5 years, when Tasty and I release our game, our first-person shooter, where every time you shoot, it goes just like beep all the time, and then the screen goes crazy and it's unplayable. You know why?
Unless you pick up the earplugs, which is a power-up.
It would be funny. Every match, you would just have to pick them up and put it in, and after that would be an amazing game. But we would just design it to have it there.
Yeah, because the thing is,
Great
if you don't have the power-up, you don't have the earplugs, you would hear the beeping sound, but then also people's footsteps would not be very loud.
Yeah.
So, It would be a game where you could use melee weapons that don't destroy your hearing, and you could hear people walk around if you're not using earmuffs or
Actually,
earplugs.
I guess they do that type of things. Or I don't guess. I do know that they do it for bombs, where they get that the tinnitus or whatever,
Yeah,
the after bombs land. But
yeah.
but actually, that could be a really cool game if you did a stealth melee game. Is that every time someone shoots, it just goes very like you become a bit deaf and you don't know what's happening. It would be actually a quite cool feature, and you try to kill them with a sword or something. So it could
Yeah.
work.
I'm just thinking, would the kind of people who play this style of game accept that sort of reality, or would they be like, that is freaking stupid? Why are we doing you know?
It
Because I
needs to
think
be
a lot of people,
consistent. I mean, if it's a
yeah.
stealth, like if it's like Mark of the Ninja, maybe they could accept. But if it's like like a PUBG shooter or some other shooter, I don't know, then it would be weird. I don't think they.
Yeah.
People don't want really that realistic.
No.
Oh, Mount and Blade Bannerlord? Yeah, they use like, but they were using like the gun. Isn't that like with gunpowder in it?
Probably, yeah.
If it's
something
more
like
real,
we're-
why not? I am very sure that most people who play these realistic shooters don't want real realism. Even Arma wouldn't. Arma even doesn't go that far. I think you don't have to put in hearing aids.
I've been a soldier, and it's really slow paced. It's not like any game, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm trained as a sharpshooter in the army, and a lot of time is spent with a ghillie suit, hiding or sleeping or waiting for something.
Yeah. Waiting, that's army. Realistic army shooter. You wait for
Yeah.
5 weeks without sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's at least the Danish army. I mean, I've not
It's in all armies.
professional soldier.
Yeah. Well, I'm professional in the way. I am actually in the army right now, even.
Oh,
But in the reserves.
oh,
Because
I'm
all
not.
Finnish males, we're basically, until we're 60, we're part of the army.
That's awesome. I don't think. I mean, I'm pretty sure that I'm not in the. But I would put it this way: if there was a war and they needed soldiers, then I would lend my assistance, because obviously, not shooting for 20 years, I would be super duper at it. I haven't been in the military for 20 years.
Yeah. Pick apart. We actually are. We did have sharpshooters in our retinue. But it depends. Usually we only train sharpshooters when there's someone who's actually good at shooting from before. Then they get us.
Well, I was in a. Well, the place where I was primarily doctors and mechanics, and then we had a recon division, which was kind of divided into two sections. One of them was like a 6.
Oh, now we lost you. I don't know. It's a good freeze frame. I think we lost them all together. I think the Danish army found him out based on finding the night elf, and now he froze. I think maybe his computer crashed. Well, I guess I don't know if he's coming back. Thank you, Tasty. Hopefully your computer didn't crash and burn. We'll be back in 5 minutes, and we can talk more. Oh, you can hear me. I can't hear you. I just see a freeze frame of you. Censored. They're on to you, Tasty. Throw the night elf out the window and run. Oh. Let's see if we can get him back, so we can say a proper goodbye. Leave call? Video? Do it. Come on. Okay. We lost him. Okay.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you. Now we can see you again.
Oh, good.
You just went
Yeah, I was swatted. Like 35 men just came into the room and like threw me on the floor, and they were like, what is your code name or something?
They were
Sorry, I didn't prepare it.
they were like, where did you get that night elf? Please give us the information. We want to buy something. I don't know anything. It's not mine.
You can't
Where
buy
is
it
it?
anymore. You can't buy it anymore. It's like a thing. Lucky number 7 says, 35 men, you wish. Yes, I wish.
Don't tell about your wet dreams. So.
Anyways, I should probably clean up after these 35 men. One of them pooped his pants when he saw the night elf. I had nothing to do with it.
At least that's what you claim. Okay.
I can hear Lady Graff in the living room. She's like, you don't need 35 men. You have me. Yes, dear. I do. I have you. I love you.
You are like 35 men. In some ways.
Yeah, I weigh the same as 35 men. And I also kind of talk for 35 men.
Yeah, both of us, I feel. If one person could probably do this in 1/35 of the time.
One serious person.
Exactly. Very serious.
Yeah. So I should click the leave call button, and then you put the pause on, and then in 5 minutes you come back and you do l'art.
L'art. Yes. Thank
you for having me.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So, before we go on to pause, I'd like to remind everybody, so today is Saturday, but we're doing Sunday's programming because I can't be here. So tomorrow we're going to run a marathon instead. So it's going to be, I think, 8 episodes of Game Design Book Club, so you can go through all the chapters. So if you missed something, join us then. Also, like it says there, we're going to do some art now. But remember, Tuesdays, if you have a game you made and you want our feedback, submit it. And why I say our, because it's my and chat's feedback. It's a community giving you feedback for your game. So submit it. There's a simple form, a Google Docs form you fill in. And then, we'll check it out on Tuesday. After that, we do some Steam research. We look at the top 25 trending Steam games. And Thursday, we just chill out. I program on my game in Game Maker. And we can talk about anything. So it's 3 times a week. And it always starts at, you can see your local times down in the panels. So I'm going to go take a short break and set up for the art because I need my Vacom, I need my drawing tablet, I need to readjust everything here, open the programs. So if you want to see some art or discuss some concept arting, we'll be back then. But otherwise, bye-bye.